Happy birthday, Council Lady Caldwell.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
You look nice.
Thank you. I tried to.
How old are you today? 29?
56.
56, you look great.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to labor. I'm not sure if any other council members will join us, but it is 5:33, and I just want to go ahead and start and be cautious of time. So I am Councilwoman Ty Atkins, the representative of the 4th District and also the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Joining me tonight is fellow council members, the council member who is a part of the Ways and Means Committee, Councilman Cozy Weatherspoon of the 2nd District, Council Representative for the 3rd District, Councilwoman Mary Brown, Council Representative for the 1st District, Councilman William Godwin, Council Representative for the 5th District and birthday girl, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell. Also, we have the Council Representative for the 5th District, Councilman Dwight Williams, our at-large council members, Councilman Corey Lay, and I believe that's it. I don't think that Councilman Brewer or Councilman Brown is on tonight. Also, we have the legal counsel for the Gary Common Council, Attorney Renzer Williams, on with us as well. So thank you guys for joining. This is a follow-up to our previous public meeting, as well as our previous initial committee meeting, which took place on November 10th regarding CPO 2020-69, which is an ordinance specifically approving the amendment to the garbage collection fees and users located in the city of Gary. From our last council committee meeting for Ways and Means, there were 3 action items that came out of that, and I want to steer this meeting so that we could stay on target with the agenda, as well as following up on those 3 action items. The first item that was an action was for us to make sure that we updated the sample fee that was attached to the original ordinance. The one that we received did not have the correct amount. The Exhibit A had an amount of $27.45, and I believe the correct amount, as it is presented in the memo from Cinder Company, and that was discussed in our previous committee meetings, is $28.25. Yes. So we just need to make sure that the clerk has the appropriate Exhibit A to attach to this ordinance, and I guess I can take that action to follow up with our deputy clerk to make sure that she has the right amended Exhibit A for this ordinance.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask just a very quick question about that? All right. So Mr. Bakari and Attorney, someone has background noise.
So if there anyone who's not speaking, can put your phone on mute.
Thank you. Mr. Bakari and Attorney Harris, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So when the Sanitary District Board voted on a resolution, it voted on a resolution with an attachment that was fill in the blank, or did it vote on a specific number? Because the initial ordinance we received had a $27 amount. So I want to be clear that the board vote to basically fill in the blank at whatever time we were in the year when it might be passed, or did they actually vote? Did they in fact vote on the $28.25?
Councilman Godwin, it's Dan Vicari. If I can answer that. The board did vote specifically on the $28.25. How the 2745 came about, there was an earlier version of backup to that ordinance of the calculations that showed an assumption that this rate would be heard, and if approved by the council, it wouldn't take effect until October of this last year, 2020. And that time obviously has come and gone. So we made a new projection that the rate, if approved, would not become effective until January of 2021. So that rate changed from 2745 to 2825. And 2825 is what the Sanitary District Board of Commissioners approved via resolution to be sent over to the Gary Common Council.
Thank you.
So that's a good question. I just wanted to follow up on that. So on the information that we received as a body on October the 12th, I believe it was, there was attached, and that was the resolution from the Board of Commissioners. I think it's resolution number SD 13-03. And so, Mr. Vicardi, I don't see that rate in here. So that might be the reason for the question, because the resolution doesn't have the number stated in the Schedule A that's attached. So maybe we're missing an additional attachment that was with the resolution.
Right. So the resolution was correct. It was the ordinance that was put together that had the old rate, the October assumption rate, if you will. So I know that I'm looking through my email, and Attorney Pohl with the city had sent, trying to see who he sent it to. You know what? I'm mistaken. That was a different ordinance. I do know that that is being worked on by our attorneys to send back over to the clerk, so that you do in your packets for the next Common Council meeting have that correct backup.
So if I could chime in, I think there's probably two different things. This is Attorney Harris talking. There's probably two different things that we're talking about. And Councilwoman Atkins, I think you're just wanting first to make sure that the resolution that you were providing.
You're on mute, Attorney Harris.
Sorry about that. Councilwoman Atkins, I think there's two issues that basically you're identifying and asking. One, you want to make sure that you have a complete version of the resolution that was adopted by GSD, right, with the attachment. Correct. And then also I think both you and Councilman Godwin are wanting to make sure that the clerk ends up with whatever the current and most accurate version of the ordinance is. So I am working with Attorney Pohl on that and making sure that there is a final version that's there. Quietly knowing that we had this committee meeting coming up, really thought it would be premature to have a final version of it out there circulating before this committee finishes their deliberation, because I know the last time we met during the committee meeting, there was some thoughts and suggestions regarding how we would ultimately end up calculating what that rate should be. So I think, in large part, you can't really finalize that ordinance until, a recommendation is kind of finalized by this committee to send to the council. But I think that's where we are in terms of the final version of the rate for the ordinance. I can make sure, though, if you don't have the complete GSD resolution with the attachment, that you have it. But it's kind of two different things that we're talking about.
Yeah, so just feedback for both of those things. I think it's appropriate for the council to have what was voted on, correctly. As I stated, the resolution that I have, it doesn't have that 2825 figure in it. So if there is in fact a version that has that, I think it would be great for the council to just have that correct documentation, as well as the same goes for the ordinance. If in fact what was presented to us for consideration initially was for the rate of a $28.25, that should be what is attached to Exhibit A and not the $27.45. It's just a matter of making sure that the paperwork is correct that is presented to the body.
Understood. I'll make sure of that.
Okay, so that was the first action item. Is there any additional questions from council members related to that? Okay, I would also like to take a moment to recognize our councilman at large, Councilman Ron Brewer, who has joined the meeting. Thank you. All right, the next action item that we had was to review options. And so I know this was brought up from Councilman Godwin during our last committee meeting. We wanted to see if there was different options for consideration so that there was not a substantial amount of hit to the resident base for these different factors that was brought in terms of justification for the increase. So I do know Mr. Riccardi did send, again, the body an analysis that went over 3 different options. And I want to give him an opportunity to kind of give us some background on that and then review these options for thorough understanding for the body.
Madam Chairman, Chairperson, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I was muted at the time. I had a couple of questions.
Oh, I'm
what's
sorry,
the-
Councilman Lay.
No, it was my fault. I was muted. What is the contractual period of the contract? It shouldn't shift. It will be from what period to what period?
It was May of 2015, and it was a 5-year agreement that expired in May of 2020. And then the contract had 2 one-year options available to it for extension. And those options have to be mutually agreeable by the parties. So both the Gary Sanitary District and Republic Services have to agree to extend. And in this case, back in May of 2020, the parties did agree to extend the agreement for 1 year. So we would have to do the same thing again in May of 2021 if the parties do desire to extend for 1 more year, which would be the last final optional extension, 1-year extension under the agreement. So
So this contract is from May 20th to May 21st. Is that what you're saying?
May 20th.
To May 21st?
May 2020 to May
2020.
2021. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay. I should have
the-
said it all. It's confusing when I did.
No, the contract started in May of 2015, and I would look at it a little differently. The 1-year extension would make it run from May of 2015 through May of 2021.
Okay, that's fine. Let me ask a question. Are you trying to collect on previous years where the emergency manager in the sanitary district did not use that elevation clause? Is that what this is doing also?
The $28.25 includes loss in revenue experienced from Republic charging the contractual rate during the years 2018, 19, and 20, and the sanitary district only charging the last year. The rate ordinance, the City Gary Common Council approved rate ordinance expired in 2018, actually December 31st of 2017, it would have expired, and that rate is $16.30.
Let me go back and ask the question a different way. What this lost revenue you're talking about, who did you lose the revenue from? I'm unclear about that. Who failed to pay you? And did you notify them they were failing to pay you?
Well, let me get the actual rates. Again, in
No,
2017.
I just want to know who failed to pay you $1. Who failed to pay you that dollar? Not what the rate is. Who failed to pay the dollar? You said lost revenues.
Well, I guess you're catching me off guard with the word fail. I don't know that fail.
How did you lose your revenues?
Right.
Tell me
Exactly.
how you
Again, so
lost
Republic charging the contractual rate
Mhm.
and the sanitary district charging its customers a contractual rate that expired December 31st, 2017.
Would
Back
his
in
customers be the residents of the city of Gary?
It would be the customers of the Gary Sanitary District that receive curbside collection service.
Okay, is that the customer of the city of Gary? Are these, we're talking about the city of Gary, right?
Well, no,
Residents of the
because
city of Gary.
I'm saying, because it's not all residents of the city of Gary. It's those that are covered under this agreement, which is residential only, not commercial, and it's residential only in 4 units and under, meaning it can't be an apartment building of more than 4 units. So it's not all residents of Gary.
I'm sorry, I'm unclear. Where do all of this you just expound, where do these individuals live? What city, what geographical city do they live in? It seems to
Well,
me
they live in Gary, but not all City of Gary residents are
No,
covered
I
under the
understand
agreement.
that, but the ones that have shorted you revenue, you're saying are people from the city of Gary, individuals from the city of Gary, not business people, right?
It is residents covered under the agreement of 4
Okay.
units or less.
How did they fail to do that? Did you bill them in 18, 19, and 20?
They didn't fail. So they were charged $16.30
Mhm,
in 2017,
mhm,
2018,
mhm,
2019,
mhm.
and now here all of 2020.
Mhm.
So it's 4 years of the same rate being charged to residents that are covered under this agreement, while each of those years, via contract, by way of contract, Republic has been charging 3% more per year.
Mhm.
I don't know how I could be any more
part I
clear.
understand. No, it's quite clear to me. Apparently, my question is not clear. Did you notify the residents of the city of Gary that they were not paying that 3%? Were they notified at any point?
So
prior to-
let me jump in here. I don't think there's a notification issue, nor is there a failure issue. They just weren't, the citizens or the residents just weren't billed the increased rate.
That's true. Now, who made
all it
that
is.
decision, Attorney Harris? Maybe I should talk to you. You seem to understand.
No, that's
better
fine.
what I'm
No,
at.
I don't have any information that a specific decision was made. The only thing I know is that increased rate was not passed along to the residents.
That's a decision. If you decide to do nothing, that in fact is a decision.
I'm
It
not
may
sure
not
that's
be.
a question. I'm not sure that that's a question. I can only tell you what I know. And
Right.
all I know is the rate wasn't passed along to the residents.
So if we didn't pay 17, 18, and 19, what would the rate now be for the citizens of Gary?
It should be, I have to pull that up. Hold on one second, pardon me. I believe this year should have been 1790, but I'm going to double check that.
Dan, this is Carl. The rate should have been, with the 10-cent administration fee, 1780 for 2020.
Thanks, Carl. I knew it was somewhere right in there.
So,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Sender, was this information in the initial memo that you sent out, or the initial attachment that was sent out on the 12th? Maybe that's a question for Dan. Was this a part of the sender memo where you did the analysis and showed us?
It was. It's right at the top of the memo. As in the not the top of the memo, the backup, which is the printout of the Excel analysis.
Yep.
Right at the top is a statement of givens, I would call it. I'm sorry, speaking engineer speak, but the statement of givens are, here's what the rates are that we're being charged per year.
I think it's easier to follow looking at the documents that you guys sent.
Yeah, so the current Gary sanitary customer trash rate is 1630, and it has been since 2017. It has not changed. And then down just slightly below that is the Republic Industries contractual rates.
Mhm.
So it starts out at 1620 in 2017, increases, every year a bit. And 2020, it's at 1770. And I think Dan has mentioned in the past that the district was trying to add administrative charge only to that fee of 10 cents. So that should have been at 1780.
Yeah, and the current ordinance that has rates that expired in 2017 had that 10-cent administrative fee as a part of it.
Madam Chairman, I have just one more question at this time.
Yes, Councilman Lay?
I had asked how many customers you had assigned to the contract in 17, 18, 19, and 20. I previously asked that question. How many houses was being serviced by Republic? 17, 18, 19, 20, each year separate.
22,894.
What year was that?
That's all for all those years. That was the contractual rate.
22,894?
Yes, sir.
That's 17. They did that in 17. They did that in 18. They did
Yes,
it
sir.
in 19. No, let me finish. In 20, so it don't be any question
Yeah.
what I'm asking. So each one of those
And
4
to clarify, you said it's 17, 18, and 19, and I answered no.
20.
In 20, no, that's, you didn't ask that initially. So 20
Yes, I
would
did.
be
You kept
20,381.
interrupting. Wait, hold on a moment. Yes, I did ask that. I said 17, 18, 19, 20. I mean, 20.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize. I'm talking about at the last meeting, you asked for 17, 18, and 19, but
No,
it is
at the last meeting, I asked for
22,894.
18, 19, and 20. I didn't ask you for 17.
Yep, in the year, and then in 2020, starting this year, it's 22,280.
Thank you. I have no other question at this point.
So no other council members have questions. I would like to go over the model rate analysis that was given to us that showed us 3 different options to consider that should have incorporated the 3% escalator, and gave us just a different scenario to consider in terms of pricing options. So Mr. Riccardi, or I think it might be more advantageous for Mr. Sender to kind of go over this, if whoever you think is appropriate. So again, council members, this email was sent to us on Monday, November the 16th, and it shows a rate model analysis for 3 different options. And this was a part of the action items that we discussed in the November 10th committee meeting.
Sure, I think that would make sense. Carl, I'm sure I'm not putting you on the spot because we've gone over these numbers so many times, but I did provide additional supplemental information that had 3 different additional options not included in the original request for a rate ordinance. I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm talking about. It was options 1, 2, and 3. Can you go over those?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And so Councilman Atkins, you have this in front of you, the 3 different options.
Yes, sir. Yes, I do.
Yep. And so on the bottom right-hand side is kind of where we were calculating those 3 different options. So the total that Republic would be charging us in 2020, before any consideration of transfer station fees or other city services, would be $4,732,272. And then in 21, that number increases to $4,873,972.80. So that's really taking their rates for each of the years times the $22,280 that they're currently charging us times 12. And then we're taking that number, dividing it by the number of households that we're presently billing. And I realize that that number changes a little bit from month to month, some up, some down, but the number we were using was 20,381. That was the best number was given to us. Times 12, as of 12 months, is so an annual number of bills of 244,572. So for 2021, beginning in January, that rate would be $19.93. Add in the 10-cent administrative fee, and we also rounded up just 2 cents to keep this, again, even 5 or, pretty much even cents here for ease of billing would be $20.05. So that would be all of 2021. And then in 22, again, with that 3% escalator, that would be then $20.65. So this first option does not include any including of the the transfer station fees or other city services. It does not include the 12% uncollectible rate. Those next options will be in options 2 and 3.
So hold on, Mr. Chair, if I could chime in right there. So the first option is more parallel to the conversation that the council members had in terms of what does it look like if in fact certain entities who have the ability of taking care of their own city services, if that was removed out of the equation. Is that correct?
That is correct. As well as we're not recouping any of the lost revenues that $28 rate had previously anticipated recouping the prior 3-year loss by not increasing the rate.
Escalator that was assessed
Right.
that we can pass through to customers. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that is a $20.05 rate
Right.
we see under 2021.
And 22 would be $20.65.
Okay. And then just to confirm, so the first numbers that you went over where it went from 4.7 million to 4.8 million to 5 million, which we have curbside, that is only the fee to collect the trash, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to
Yep.
make sure everyone is clear. All right. And then
And
okay.
And it does not include any allowance for doubtful accounts or uncollectible accounts. And as I think Dan has told you, you know, the district in the past does not collect 100% of its trash fees or its sanitary district fees. So there is that allowance in options 2 and 3 that take that in consideration. But, you know, Dan thought you would want to see what would be the rate without that allowance in there. So this is option 1 is just basic services only. Does not include any additional transfer fees or other city services.
Okay. And so for 2021, I'm going to use the word forecast, but that might not be right. We're forecasting, or we know that the contract rate that Republic is charging us is $18.23.
That's correct.
Okay. And then 2022, we know based on, well, if we opt in, right, for that additional
Correct.
year, the mutual agreement, then that cost that Republic will be charging us is $18.78.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that too, just if I may, that's only for those few months at the beginning of 2022 before the contract expires,
In May.
beginning of May. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, all right. So $18.23, $20.05. So that's $1.82 for 2021. 1878, 2065. So that's just $1.87. So I'm just writing those because that's just the overage. I'm gonna use that word. So basically, just at cost, right? So if we were just paying the cost of the service, we would only be charging, if we went with option 1 and 2, well, option 1, excuse me, for 2021, then it would just be $1.82 more than what Republic is charging us. And again, that's only incorporating a 10% administrative fee, and that's not incorporating any of the services that GSD is doing on behalf of the city. I just wanted to make sure that all council members understood that. And again, based on the analysis that Mr. Stender just went over for 2022, it's just an additional $1.87. Not gonna say just, but it's an additional $1.87 for 2022. And again, that's not incorporated. That's only if in fact we were only paying, looking at the contract rate from Republic, we will be charging a little bit more than that. And it doesn't incorporate the additional services, so it wouldn't even be enough to take care of that. Is that correct, Mr. Stender? I want to put words into, but I'm trying to
No,
make sure.
that's correct. Although I did calculate it's $1.82 above.
In 2021, right? $1.82.
Yes.
And then I got $1.87 in 2022, or did I mess that up?
Madam Chairman, I have a question. I guess I'm a little bit at a loss. I don't have that document in front of me. What would it cost for the year 2021, to give us identical services to what we have right now? And when I say I'm talking about the citizens of Gary. What would it cost us? What you're doing right now, where you fail to use the escalator, what would that be just for the year of 2021? I don't want to hear millions and all of that. I just simply want a figure that would, in terms of dollars per person.
If I'm not mistaken, I think these are the options that they're going. Is this the
Was
second
that right?
option?
I'm sorry. Like I say, I'm at a disadvantage. I've read the document. I read it back in November. So if it's there, then I'll wait and they'll tell me what
Yes,
it would
sir.
cost us.
I think they're going to get to that one.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
So we're clear on option 1. Mr.
Okay.
Snyder? Okay.
So option 2 then, again, is similar to option 1, but then once we calculated down to the 1993, the rate before the administrative fee, we did factor in the 12% uncollectible rate. And so that becomes then additional 12% additional costs of $22.65 would be the total plus administrative fee of 10 cents. So then that would be $22.75.
Okay.
And then option 20, or in 22, if we continue with their optional increase, then it would, with the 12% uncollectible, you'd have to go up to $23.45.
Okay. I see that one.
And then option 3, then that would, again, the same thing, except we added in the $650,000 for the additional transfer station fees and other city services. And the 650 is kind of what Mr. Vicari has mentioned, that those costs are what we're really incurring more recently on an annual basis, because the Republic is actually picking up more debris, and citizens are dropping more things off than they had in the past. And so it's instead of 480 is what we initially used, it's now increased to 650,000. So then that rate would go up to 2580 and 2645 and 22. I'm sorry, that's option 3. Option 2 would be $22.75 and then 2345 and 22.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, yeah, and then option 3 with the 650,000, that is then 2580 and 2645. Now, maybe to answer Mr. Lay's question, Councilman Lay's, if you didn't factor in the 12%, if you wanted to include just the 650, which would be the transfer station fees and other city services, then that rate is going to be $22.59 plus another 10 cents. So now you're talking about $22.70 in 2022. And then you're going to be talking about $23.30 in 2022.
What is it for 21?
Be
$22.69.
plus then, yes. Yep.
So that would be 21.
Yes, sir.
Look, so what service are you deleting from that that you're talking about paying? We're paying 27 for. What service are you being deleted under option 3?
None.
Option 1 had the one where services were deleted.
I'm not concerned with 1 and 2 any longer. Just 3.
So
So
3 didn't have anything deleted.
so if we so in other words, the fee that if we approved it right now would be the $22.70 if we used option 3.
Without the 12% uncollectible rate, that is correct.
Right, right. I happened to have talked to the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Ault, a couple of days ago. Apparently, Wayne Ault, apparently this would have to go up to the U.S. Attorney now. It's something the council did in 2010. Some of you were not available at that point. What I had made was a suggestion, and I believe Attorney Trent McCain is on. I don't think Attorney Jewel Harris Jr. will be part of it, but I think he understands it. As I understand, we owe you $4.3 million. Madam Chairman, it's okay if I say this at this point, or do you want to do something else?
No, that's fine. We just had one more action item, but I think
I'll wait for that. I'll wait for that.
it might be what you're talking about, because we had an action that was discussed between, I think Attorney Harris might have taken that action to connect to the federal government. I might misspeak, to talk about an option to either hold or to possibly delay a little bit our current debt payments until, and I might be misspeaking, but it seems like you might be speaking on this, Attorney Lay.
I don't think Mr. Harris, they were not aware of it the other day.
Okay.
At all. So it is possible Mr. Wayne Ault is the local U.S. attorney that's involved. But let me wait and see what. So I don't want to repeat what someone else is going to say. Let me hear it.
Yeah, I can shed some light on that before before we go on. To answer the question, no, I have not made any contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I did speak with attorneys for the Prince administration, and they're aware of the conversation we had during our last committee meeting. And obviously, based upon the discussion we had, it would be the city that would, have to make the decision that it does in fact want to, petition the court and obviously get the buy-in from the U.S. Attorney's Office on this idea. Councilwoman Atkins, like you said, Councilman Lay, you said that Attorney Trent McCain is on the line. I think it would be best for him as Corporation Counsel for the city to express the city's position with respect to the city getting some type of relief from the requirements of the consent decree. And I think your purpose in going down that path, Attorney Lay, correct me if I'm wrong, is to potentially come up with another source of funds to defray some of the increase to the residents.
It's absolutely true. And I may be initially, and I'm sure my friend, my partner, Attorney Trent McCain would prefer me to proceed. We both have two different responsibilities, but we will join very quickly. What I did, and he and I have talked at a great extent. I've talked to the mayor equally a great deal of time concerning this. So I'm sure he will correct me when I'm wrong here. It's 4.3 million, and I'll do it in whole numbers. I guess in 21, we have to pay approximately $600,000, the city of Gary, when I say we. When I say we for 22, I believe it's a little over $1 million. And the total amount owed by the city of Gary is 4.3 million. So one of the things that Attorney McCain and I discussed the other day, and of course he's going to act as cleanup here for what I do say, we had looked at the possibility of filing a motion, which he is presently preparing, on or about somewhere around the end of November, let's say before the 1st of December. We would hope that the sanitary district attorney, as well as Mr. McCain, would sign off. It would not be necessary for me to sign. I will be part of this all the way, though, but I will not have to sign it. That will have to be submitted to the local U.S. attorney, which is Wayne Ault, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He will then submit it to Washington, D.C. In other words, a slight correction to what Mr. Harris indicated, and I'm sure he did it in good faith. I was told the other day that decision would have to be made in Washington. It would not be made locally, and it would have to go up there. So where he said they probably would read the paper and see what we've done. If we got agreement for all three people, I do not believe Judge Van Brocklin would be any problem. I believe he would accept it. There would be no money directly out of the pocket of anyone. It simply would be a deferred payment or a postponement of a payment going on here. The mayor has agreed to utilize some, if not all of the money. We don't have that exact figure at this time. That would have to come back to the council, by the way. The council itself would have to, the executive branch would file an ordinance, and of course the legislative branch would have to approve that ordinance in terms of what could be done with the money that was being appropriated. So unfortunately, I cannot put a time to that. I believe at this time, Attorney McCain certainly can take over. I'll pass the baton to him if I've said something that is not factual or anything he wants to add to it. So I will yield whatever time I have to Attorney McCain.
Thank you very much, Councilman Lay, and thank you for my promotion today of being promoted to be your partner. I feel honored.
That's a loss of pay.
Well, trust me, I know about delayed gratification.
Yeah.
But let me say that you articulated what our efforts are up to this point clearly and accurately. At your suggestion at the last council meeting, when the body was considering this ordinance, the administration expressed a willingness to work with the council and see if there were some creative ways that we could try to lessen the impact on our citizens, on the 22,280 people that this would affect. The administration has been trying to do that. We have made overtures to the United States Attorney's Office. Dan Vicari and his staff have been making phone calls as well to see if we could get the buy-in of that stakeholder, because as you pointed out, Councilman Lay, if the Civil City, the Gary Sanitary District, and the United States Attorney's Office agree, then we feel confident. I've been practicing law 18 years, and I know I don't predict what a judge will do, but I can say I feel confident in that the judge will be at least receptive to our motion if it's jointly filed, and we are in the process of doing that. The law department will be drafting the motion, sharing it with our stakeholders, and presenting it to the USA's office for their approval as to form before we present it to the court itself.
That's why our partnership is good. Add my 47 years to yours, we now have 65. It's more than Van Brockman has.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Attorney McCain. Now that we have you here, I did submit a letter requesting that the mayor or representative for the administration did attend this meeting, seeming that the mayor is the sponsor of this ordinance. I just wanted to get your opinion. Thank you for the feedback in terms of the work related to addressing the option to try to defer debt for a temporary time. But that doesn't have anything to do with the rate that we still need to deal with. Is that correct? Those are two separate issues, right?
As the representatives from the sanitary district, and they will correct me if I am wrong, as they expressed when this was first brought to the body, is that the rate has to happen. The rate increase has to happen. The federal overseers have expressed concern about this. The reason why a special administrator was appointed in the first place was because of the fiscal irregularities and things that were going on at the district. And now that we are on the right path, the federal government has decided that at this point, a special administrator does not need to be reappointed, but that is fluid. If we don't continue to behave in that manner and in a positive path, then they can revisit that decision and appoint a special administrator. Also, as Mr. Vicari pointed out with the body, is that the State Board of Accounts has given the GSD some audit exceptions for having to subsidize the solid waste part with the wastewater dollars. So this increase has to happen. But given that the referendum passed and given that there is an imminent rate increase by NIPSCO, and not to mention the fact that we have endured a global pandemic that the full extent of which we won't know for some time now, this is a ripe opportunity for us to ask the federal government for some deferral and for some grace as we brace ourselves for the economic impact of COVID-19. So to answer your question succinctly, Councilwoman, is that we require an increase. We have to make that decision, but we're trying to at least lessen the impact on the citizens so that the increase won't be 68% at one time.
Right.
We can step it up gradually to get folks used to it and get to where we need to be in a reasonable period of time. If we ask the government for a 2-year deferral and only get one, then that's gonna affect how we have to step it up. But if we ask for the moon and get the stars, we can adjust ourselves and govern ourselves accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Attorney McCain.
Councilwoman,
Yes, Councilman Brewer.
I understand the spirit of what we're trying to do, defer payments and things of that nature, but eventually we're basically just kicking the can down the road. If we put this out to contract, everything is going up. I mean, we see we shop in the store, we see foods going up. I received several calls from different vendors that increases going up in prices for supplies. So everything is going up. But I think we're going to hit this point again when it's time, whether we renew the contract or a new vendor comes in. I don't see it going down. I haven't heard no one projected that the price will go down. I think we're going to eventually hit this, either deal with it now or we're going to deal with it later. I think it's probably best that we just go ahead and start biting the bullet at it now, some kind of way. I like the options that's been presented to us. I know Attorney Lay, Councilman Lay asked about what services that we will not be getting. And I would like to just have a little more clarity on I think that was probably B that was brought up, the second one. What service will be in that and what service will not be in that, because I think I'm leaning more towards that one than anything. So if I can have a little more clarity on that part there.
Madam Chairman, again, we didn't want to just expose everything. If you shift the postponement for 2 years, you hopefully will have new revenue. You have a $400 million casino sitting out there. Hopefully will be online. First, secondly, we hope the pandemic itself will be over. They're talking about possibly something will be made, a vaccine will be made available in December. So you can't look at your present day cash flow. Your revenues and cash flow will increase. If nothing else, we will start getting admission fees. So again, it's a lot of mathematical details here. And I think you were right. We're not necessarily talking about changing the rate. I thought Attorney McClain was clear on that. We were simply saying this is more for the public, not as much for the council. In other words, we will not just simply sit here and allow this impact to be made. People are not working currently, much worse, and hopefully we'll see, let's say 2 years from now, hopefully the virus will be under control. There will be more employment. There will be more opportunities. So again, we're not saying bite the bullet later. We're simply saying that it's no big loss. We will know where money will come from. That money at this point, or revenues, I should say, have not been allocated because we can't calculate it. So again, I heard what Councilman Brewer said, but again, I think he's looking at present day revenue. We're not in our assumptions and calculations. Again, there are other options. So we're not asking you not to in fact set a rate. Go ahead and set your rate, but hopefully through Channel 4 and other places, the citizens of this community, and again, it took not a lot of convincing, but it did take convincing for me to convince the mayor that we should pursue it. And he certainly, after about 2 or 3 conversations, he bought into the idea and told me to get with Attorney McCain and figure it out. We can't dot all the I's and cross all the T's at this point, but it's something that will proceed even after you set the rate up. Again, the final decision, and maybe I wasn't clear on this, will be made by the council. In other words, you will have to appropriate these funds because they're being put somewhere else, but there's no advantage if we can get a postponement. If the sanitary district will agree, and they seem to have agreed to postponement, there's no reason to rush and pay them. Again, we can utilize certain portions of that money. If we get 2 years, fine. If we get 1 year, fine. You know, a shade of a too big beat the hot burning sun. So again, so rather than to reject it out of hand, there's a lot of other sources of revenue that we can pursue. Until recently, I thought the casino itself would be a source of revenue. But again, we will attempt to do that. And had the mayor not agreed, I would do it on my own. In other words, I feel, again, an obligation to the people who have elected me in this community to reduce the impact of all of these things coming online. I've thought about them, and I do not see them as independent. I see them all, the money is coming out of the same pocket. So again, I wouldn't reject what we're saying or try to find a way to do it. Set your rate, whatever the rate is. I simply will be concerned if you're trying to collect these back fees. That I do have a concern, but set the rate. The council will not be bothered with this. It will be other people outside of the council working it up. When we get it completed, we'll come back to the council. So yeah, the council will not be asked to do anything, but at the very end to approve what we come back in, then of course you could weigh it and get 5 or 6 votes, whatever you have, and make a decision. It will not be harmful to the council, to the sanitary district, or to the U.S. government. And so we're going to proceed. If the city failed to proceed, I would proceed on my own. There would be nothing to stop me from doing it. So again, set your rate. I think Attorney McCain was clear on that. Set the rate, whether it's B, as Mr. Brewer said, or the third one. I just need to know myself. I don't want any services lost. No service. That every service should be there, and that we should pay for it. That will allow us to vote for it because we're going to be trying to reduce it. And I think some of these things will come to fruition. I really do. I wouldn't just guess at it. That we will try to find the money to reduce the impact on the citizens in this community without them losing service. We don't have services now. We lose a whole lot of, this community has lost a lot of service, whether it's police, firemen, it's all over the place. If you go to the post office, you got one person servicing 20 people in line. So we don't have services. So I want the one where we don't lose any services from what we have now. And apologize for the length of time, but we will find the money sources. They're there. It's just too difficult at this point to explain them all. We're still working on it. And we will know more, let's say, the end of November than we know now, although it's fairly close.
Madam Chair, can I have that overview of B, the option B? What service that we will be losing, or what's the, yes.
Sure. So option 2 does not include any of the current services that we receive, such as any city-owned facilities being serviced, parks, beaches, general service cleanup, citizen drop-off, the community cleanup dumpsters that we receive. None of that is included in option 2, which was the 2021 price point of $22.75, and then the forecast 2022 price point of $23.45.
So with that being said, have the administration looked at on their end, what can they do as far as making sure that they continue to have the beach picked up, make sure City Hall is done, firehouses, make sure that the library paid their part? Have we explored that option there? Because I do know inside this contract, there is, with your local trash, there is one bulk item that you can put out with your trash.
Right. So I believe option 2, and if Mr. Sender is still on here, correct me if I'm wrong, that will remove that that particular service from the option 2 that you mentioned. So none of that will be involved in that.
That is correct, Councilman Atkins. It would remove the 680,000 for the additional services that you had mentioned. Option 3 would include those additional services of 650,000 a year.
Councilwoman Atkin, I have something important to add, if I may.
Yes, please, Ms. Riccardi.
One thing to think about with respect to Councilman Brewer's question, have we explored doing things ourselves, basically, I believe is what he's asking. That is doing things ourselves. That is our community cleanups. That is really that 650 grand for the most part is the tonnage or the weight of the material that's brought by us in-house to Republic to dispose of. You have to dispose of it somewhere, so that's a cost. And right now that's $46 a ton for the contract, which is an industry standard rate. If you went back out in the bid, you wouldn't do any better than that. I just want to mention that, you know, that would be a cut of service, not can we do this service more efficiently.
So I guess the question needs to be asked, have the administration looked on where they can take on that certain portion of that piece of this pie here? Have the administration looked at, can they take on that portion, and whatever that additional rate is, we give it to the citizens there?
So I think, for example, Mr. Riccardi, Councilman Brewer had brought up in the last council meeting, when we talked about pickup at the library or pickup for some of the drop-offs or the receptacles that are on the street. I believe a portion of those services is rolled into the residential monthly fee. So if in fact a portion, whatever portion is rolled up in that the library, since they have their own revenue generating budget, if you will, if they paid for their services specifically, if Marquette Park paid for their services specifically, whether it being rolled up into the resident fee. Right, Mr. Brewer?
Absolutely.
Madam,
if I can let Mr. Riccardi answer that question.
Yeah, and I made a fatal error at the last meeting where I said libraries. I think it just rattled off at the tip of my tongue as a city.
Just one?
But libraries are not included. But
Okay.
what are included are our public safety building, all of our parks, our beaches, our fire departments, and the citizen drop that is highly utilized by Gary residents. Those are the things that are included. I think I did say library, and libraries are not included. They take care of their own trash with their own commercial agreements.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think Councilman Lay had a comment.
Yeah, again, that's what we're doing. That's what we're. So the executive branch, we understand we're going to have to find money. It's a lot easier to say you get these individuals to do it than what we're pursuing. Again, the rate is going to be set. I think Councilman Brewer had said, let's move the trash from the alley to the front. But that's not going to occur. To get people, we can't get people to wear masks during a pandemic. So when you start talking about structuring your community to do those things, it's not there. There's no question we can look at these as other source of money. The mayor and I have discussed at the very beginning of this entire thing. That's one of the reasons I started to try to think of ways to lessen the impact. This was back before we passed the referendum. We had these discussions because we didn't know the outcome of the referendum. So I started speaking with him about that. Again, I believe you're going to set the rate within 2 or 3 weeks, 30 days. So these other matters will require us to meet with people. As I have indicated, I will be part of this from now or from the previous up to its very end. So what is being suggested, that there's no question we will look at that as a revenue source. But the one that we have the greatest control over right now is the shifting of these 2 years to where there's a flow of revenue. If we did that releases approximately $600,000 in 2021, which the mayor is now willing to come back to the council with some portion or all of it to lessen the impact. That's immediate. That's faster than trying to negotiate and look at the budgets of other people. We all have loss of revenue because of the tax caps. We're going to even lose more based upon the census. So this is an item we can put our hands on. We can see it, and we can move it. Again, I want all of the present, and it may not have sounded that way when I started. I want all of the present services given. I don't want to cut services. Let's give them the service, and then let the executive branch figure out, and they will figure out how to lessen the impact and keep the services going. If we need to, I doubt very seriously we're going to look at a system that cuts out the police department. I mean, we're going to leave public safety in there. Let's leave everything as it is, and I believe that may be option 3, adding in the 600,000. I understood that. I believe Attorney McCain understands that. I certainly know the mayor understands that the services, we just simply have had too many conversations late in the evening and early in the morning. So once you set the rate, I would assume the rate would come online. If it goes up, as I understand, to Washington and back, it would go up and be back by the first of the year. Although I understand it started in May, the 2020, and goes to May 2021. But the approval would go up and come back from them very quickly. I believe what we're suggesting will be, there's no reason to question an idea that postponed. 25 million was postponed at the Gary Community School system, and at the same time, a referendum passed. I think they would understand, the U.S. attorney, the judge, I think they would understand. They would have no reason to refuse an agreement, and we seem to have a local agreement at this point. Let's don't throw it out. That's very important. We got 2 different agencies agreeing. The Gary Sanitary, just in the city, the executive is functioning. He's functioning. He may not have called the library board and said, well, how much can you pay? We're functioning right now with something we can do very fast. We believe that, and we might have made somewhat of a joke when we said 18 years plus 47. The court is going to accept it based upon experience. There's no reason to turn it down. If 3 attorneys agree, the court's going to be happy. It's probably going to tell us all, step in the chambers and get a cup of coffee. Attorneys don't agree. So we're walking in with an agreement. It's something we can do very fast. We will have this done before you can even pass the ordinance. You can't pass this ordinance until December the 1st. We will have the motion drafted. I'm sure it's pretty, we mentally know what's going to go in the motion already. All we have to do is draft it, send it up. Now, sending it up may take a couple of weeks, but it's already been sent up that one attorney that is a member of the council, this council was, I didn't say the council has agreed to this. I simply indicated I was from the council and could it be sent up. So the idea has already been sent up to the U.S. attorney that will make a decision. I don't know if that person will be left with the change of administration, but it's the fastest thing to do. Let's don't look at any way to cut services at this point. Let's give this community all of its services. It's going to pay a lot of money to keep these services. Well, it's the referendum, NIPSCO, and of course the sanitary district. So let's don't, at this point, give us a chance to function. Set your rate, give us a chance to function. And I'm sure we will do it very quickly, very swiftly, and we will do it in an orderly manner and lessen the impact. The impact is going to be reduced, I assure you that. As much as I can assure you of anything.
Madam Chair Lady.
I actually think that Councilman Godwin had.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you,
Councilman
Madam Chair.
Weatherspoon?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilman Godwin. You know, I think that one of the things, I agree with Councilman Lay, we do not need to lose any services at this point in time. It's very vital that we keep those services in place. But I think at the same time, it is also important that the sanitary district, you know, in their negotiations with the entity, with Republic, that they also look at some modification that may help us in this community at this point in time. As you all know, one of the biggest challenges that we have is dumping, all right? And one of the biggest reasons, and I hear it all the time, why people dump, and I have to agree with it, is because they have nowhere to take this stuff after certain hours. And, you know, what I'd like to see, I would like to see us keep all the services, but I would like to see some enhancement. There are some locations in this community right now where we can put drop-off boxes, you know, provided the Republic and the sanitary district can come to some agreement. There are places actually where we could put some boxes that would help to alleviate this dumping. I have some places in the second district where people just dump continually over and over. It's the same spots. And so I think in looking at this contract and moving forward and maintaining these services, I think that we need to look at also some modification of some sort to help ourselves, you know, as it relates to dumping, to help ourselves into, as it relates to eliminating this trash burden. Because, you know, it's a cost factor, but it's a cost factor that we can control to a great extent if we look at some modifications by, you know, not necessarily eliminating some services, but finding some ways to modify those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Weatherspoon. If I could just make a quick comment to that, I just want you as well as the body to know that if I'm not mistaken, I think Republic has supported some type of subsidies, if you will, for lack of a better word, for the city of Gary, more specifically with the cleanup efforts that a lot of us navigate and have dumpster days. They support free dumpsters a lot. They charge the city a discount rate. So I know that that is one strategy that they have tried to implement specifically. I think it's Doug Rosenbaum, because I've spoken to him directly in terms of his support with some of the dumpster days in the 4th District and being able to give us a substantial discount rate for those dumpsters. So I know that's one thing, but you're right in terms of us working and making sure that we have a partnership with them going forward and helping us adhere to any cost avoidance or cost saving strategies for the city as well. Councilman Godwin?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, I want to just remind everybody how hard it was for us to get this to committee. And so I certainly know that while there are some who might be willing to vote for $28, I am not anywhere near that. And so I certainly support whatever efforts there can be to reduce the cost on the residents. I mean, I'm nowhere near $28. And so I think we have to explore all those options. I did want to get clarity from Councilman Lay when he said to set your rate. To whom were you referring, and what does that mean?
Okay, first let me congratulate Mrs. McCain. She's online. She's our new school board representative. She probably has done something that she soon grow to possibly dislike. When I said set the rate, I was talking to the council. Pass the ordinance. In other words, whatever the 5 want, pass something. Just pass it.
Okay.
Again, I had nothing in mind particular. Pass whatever will get 5 votes. Okay. And at that point, other people will come in now and start, they will start to function. That's all I'm saying. I agree with Mr. Weatherspoon. I don't want to see the loss of services. If you cut services, again, you could probably reduce the bill to $1. You know, you just keep cutting services. Once you set the rate, the executive branch is going to function. I will function. We will then, after we do what we're going to do, we will come back to the council with where we are. All we're saying at this point is time. But we're not trying to stop, and I think Attorney McCain made it clear, we're not trying to stop you setting the rate. So the council, 5 of you choose the option. I'll sit and listen to it, and whatever you come up with, then we will deal with it. Whatever you set up, but I think the only thing that Mr. Witherspoon and I just are in agreement on, I'm not even looking for enhancement. That was a good idea. At this point, set a rate without the loss of services. I did not understand it would be $28. Now, maybe it's something I missed, again, because I don't have the document in front of me. But I thought option 3 was no longer 28. I thought it was less than 28. In fact, I thought it was less than 27. Mr. Sender, am I correct about that?
Yes, you are, Councilman Lay. Option 3, as it's presented, is $25.80 in 2021 and $26.45 in 2022.
Right, and
Does
Carl.
all council members, I'm sorry, Councilman Lay.
I was going to say Carl and I know each other, so that's why I said I'm not talking about 28. As I understood it, there was a reduction. Again, I tend to reduce certain things to memory, and I hope I'm not off now. Okay, I might have went off for a moment. I tend to reduce things to memory as opposed to read a lot of papers. Even when I read them, I reduce the memory. Set that rate then, if that gets us everything, if you can live with that rate, set that rate, and then we will know specifically what we have to do. Hopefully it would come online January the 1st. I don't think they can, well, if we set it, it can come quicker. We will then know what we're dealing with.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question to Mr. Lay's point about setting the rate? If we set the rate at that rate, what's the difference from what was proposed at the beginning? I think it was 27 and some change. What's the big difference now that we get a rate at 25 when it was proposed at the beginning at 27 and some change?
Well, if you, even I can, $2 to be exact.
Well, I understand the money is different, but I'm saying as far as services.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, it is.
No,
So
there's
what
some-
the differential also included the 3% escalator that was in the contract that was assessed in 2018, 19, and 20.
Well, I don't think we should pay that. I believe that can be, that can be stopped.
I'm answering
can't stop
Councilman
it.
Brewer's question so that he can understand what the difference in the price points was. So that $28, I think it was $28.25. It included all of the above. It included the services. It included the 12% loss of the collection rate. It included the 3% escalator from previous years, and also the forecast 3% that will be assessed per the contract in 2020 this year, as well as 2021. Is that right, Mr. Vicardi and Mr. Sender?
Yes. Everything's included in the number, Councilman Brewer. All services are there. The only thing that's not there, the difference between the two numbers, is not playing catch up, if we will. I think that's the term we've been using, Carl, is a catch up for not charging for the past 3 years the rate that we've been charged.
So the better comparison, Councilman Brewer, is between what was in our initial ordinance and then option 3.
Okay, I got you. So we're basically be taking a chance. If we went with option 3, we go with the 25 and some change, and Mr. Lay and Attorney McCain do what they need to do with the federal government trying to get some relief or get it delayed. Eventually, it's still going to be probably paid at some point.
Why do you keep, we're going to pay everything a postponement? I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, with your permission. Listen, how is it confused?
No, I just want to.
We don't pay. You have a different flow of revenue. You have a different flow of revenue. Right now, you don't have a $400 million casino setting there being constructed. You do not have, you will not have, hopefully, an unemployment rate that goes through the ceiling, which may increase their ability to collect funds. It may increase the ability to pay taxes. People will be much better off. They can leave the home. in other words, we're hoping, and I would even say praying, that conditions improve. Now, if conditions get worse, then of course the sanitary district may be out of money. If it gets much worse, the city of Gary may close. Again, I'm assuming that once you get rid of the pandemic, once you bring the casino online, assuming they're not all indicted and put in jail, it's out there, so that's pretty much is going to come. All I'm asking, and I don't know how this is getting lost, set the rate. Whatever you think makes you happy, set the rate. Then we know what we're dealing with. We're going to work at it. We're not asking you not to set the rate. We said set the rate. So if the 5 of you decide that you want a rate other than the other rate, I think Councilman Weatherspoon, and I certainly don't need to speak for him, I will repeat what he said. We don't want any loss of services. If you lose the services, we will continue to work. In other words, it will be clear that we're going to look for the money. We believe it's there. But if you do not understand that your revenue should change, if it doesn't change once you set up a $400 million casino, we need to insure it and burn it up.
Let me ask a question to Mr. Kane from administration point, Madam Chair. So is it the administration view that they would use casino dollars to help offset some of these fees if we're going to keep the rate the same?
Councilman Brewer, we haven't made that decision yet.
I would like to know that decision before I cast a vote on this, because I think Mr. Lace talks, and I do understand that the casino is different, but I know we still have a lot of obstacles inside this city here. And I know those casino dollars are going to be needed to go to a lot of different other places, not just to cover trash pickup inside the city. So I would like to know exactly where the administration feels on that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Councilman Brewer. I think a good analogy would be if after you graduate from college, and if you had to be like me and a million other people, you had to take out student loans. But the day after you graduate from college, fortunately, they don't send you a bill. You get 6-month deferral before you have to pay back that money. And what we're asking the federal government to do in this consent decree is, we know we owe the Gary Sanitary District this money. The Civil City does. We're asking for a 2-year, at least a 1-year deferral to not have to pay those dollars back, so that we could offset this impact on the citizens. To answer your question earlier about, are we just kicking the can down the road? The answer is yes. We eventually are going to have to get up to the 28.25. But we're trying to say that we don't want to do that in 2021. If we could step it up by next year, if we go with option 3, or if this council votes on option 3, that'll be $3 less than the 28.25. And then eventually, after the 2-year deferral period is over, we could go up to the rate where we need to be in order to be caught up and on solid financial footing with both entities. Does that analogy make any sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the other thing, Madam Chair, and I agree with everything Attorney McCain said. Again, the impact is not going to be on this council or the mayor in terms of what our salaries will be. The impact will be what the citizens, what we should all be thinking about, what the citizens of this community. And I think of and again, I use the formula, the needs of the many outweigh the few and the one. So again, we're looking at the entire community. If there is no improvement from where we stand now, there's a tremendous problem that's occurring, whether the city will continue to exist. So I'm not sure we're kicking the can down the road, we'll read the mayor has agreed to reallocation of the money. Now, he didn't come online and say this, but he has agreed he will come to the council because you can't appropriate money and spend. I'm sure you knew that you can't do both, that he will bring an ordinance to the council. He will ask what portion of the money that we're saving. We indicated we're going after over $1.6 million over a 2-year period. So we're looking at a much longer period. We're looking at 21 and 22. We just don't know what will occur. Well, we're positive as much as we can be that something favorable will occur because we have agreements going up. Now, it's hard to explain agreements, but once you have an agreement, there's no one, we will not get as much objection going up as we probably will before this council. It'll be a lot smoother going up because we will go up with agreements, and we all won't necessarily speak. We will just simply move up. So again, I just didn't want to, and I'm sure the city feels the same way, but the mayor has agreed. I assure you, I wouldn't be fumbling and all of that. He maybe has not sent you a sworn affidavit, but he has sent his attorney. His attorney is here. I'm here for all practical purposes. I'm working under Mr. McCain. I tried to raise myself to a partnership, but maybe I'm under him. So we're working on it. I wouldn't be there if it didn't benefit the city. I have no concern with the council getting an increase in its pay. So that's the only reason I'm there. And I believe, and don't want to suggest the council is looking for an increase either. But again, he sent an attorney. He wouldn't be before us if the mayor, and what we've said is that we are really willing to allocate those dollars, some portion of it. But again, we're just simply postponing the payment. I have no idea what the revenue will be once that casino come online. I can't begin, but I do know at this point that those funds are not obligated. And I don't know where you would spend the money if you didn't spend it on the citizens of this community. And this impacts the entire city, the picking up the trash and what would happen if you don't adequately pick it up. So the mayor is willing to shift the money. If not, I'm going to say so, and he better correct me, come online if I'm incorrect. He's willing to do that. He just don't know what at this point. You're asking very specific questions. If you tell me how much the admission fees will be to the city for the month of January 2023, I probably can calculate what we're willing to give up. But we don't know the answer yet. But we believe it will be a greater flow of revenue than we currently have. And Attorney McCain wouldn't be here if we weren't prepared to work on it. He wouldn't be here. He would be somewhere else.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Councilman Godwin?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, Councilman Weatherspoon.
Thank you, Councilman Godwin and Chair Lady. Listen, when I talked about cost savings, I don't want to make it sound as if I'm talking about a cost savings as it relates to the contract. What I am talking about is that the city spends a substantial amount of money in other areas, repeating itself. As I mentioned, dumping. We spend a substantial amount of time going to these repeat dump sites. We use manpower that can be used in other areas, resources that can be used in other areas. When I'm talking about a cost savings and not necessarily, losing any services, but modifying those services, looking at modifying those services where we can save in other areas. For example, as I said earlier, when you put those transfer dump sites out there, that eliminates a lot of dumping because people are going to dump at night because they have nowhere else to dump. So I think, again, we have to look at modification. I'm in favor of option 3, but with that, we still have to look at some modifications to it to service ourselves. Because, if we do this thing correctly and the obligations that are placed on Republic are correct, we can save ourselves money or save the city money in other areas. We can save resources and allot those resources to other necessary services and things in this community that we surely need.
Thank you, Councilman Witherspoon. Councilman Godwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things. I do, number one, want to encourage, I think you sent a letter to the mayor asking him to attend this meeting, and I will also follow up with him. I'm not going to carry this burden alone. The mayor is the sponsor of this legislation. We're making a lot of assumptions, or I'm not saying anyone's not telling the truth, but we're saying what the mayor is going to do. And this is too critical and too important for representatives to be here. I have a lot of respect for Attorney McCain and as well as my colleague on the council. But at some point, I'm not going to vote on this if we don't hear from the sponsor of legislation. And I'm not going to carry this burden alone. Secondly, when we talk about who's going to pay for some of the city services, whether it's the various parks, that's very much in the abstract. So, I mean, is each park going to pay its own share if that's the option that is chosen? I mean, Marquette Park is just one park, but obviously there's a lot of parks, 50 parks, I think, 50 or so parks across the city. So how does that get paid for? Out of what funds? Because certainly Marquette wouldn't be paying for everybody's collection. We know there's some revenue that's generated there. So I think we really have to think about what that means for the city to pay, if that's the option that's chosen, for the city to pay for its own services in terms of trash pickup. So I don't know, I think that there's a lot of analysis that needs to happen. I'm afraid to vote on something based on hypotheticals down the road and what a court may or may not do, whether it's in session, how long it takes for them to get back to us, especially in this environment. But I don't think we're suggesting that this is our only option. And I recall in one of the earlier committee meetings, it may not be a desirable option, but these services could return back as a city function. I know that has its own level of complication, but we're suggesting, it seems, that either we raise the rate and allow GSD to continue to do this, or else trash won't be picked up. At the end of the day, the city is responsible for providing that service to the residents. And just lastly, I'm a little concerned about the casino. The $6 million or so that we get is the minimum, but I'm not sure if they actually paid what was due. I don't think it will be anywhere near $6 million. They just have to pay that per the contract. So even if, for example, and I'm totally making this up, I am shooting from the hip right now, but let's just say that actually, if it was based on the pure calculation in the contract, let's say they would actually have to pay $4 million as opposed to 6. Even if there is an increase in activity, an increase of patrons to the casino, it might still be at $6 million, right? Or just slightly above it. Because now they're paying, as I understand it, far more than they should actually have to pay based on the raw formula. So even if it does improve, and I certainly hope the casino is a wild success, I'm a little worried about relying on that to meet this obligation. So again, I think we still have a lot of questions. I want shared responsibility, because at the end of the day, we will be blamed for raising people's trash rates. And I think the administration needs to get out front and explain to the folks why this is necessary. And this is not merely a council action, but this is an administration and council action, whatever the number is that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Godwin.
Madam Chair, I don't know, maybe it's something that I don't know. Again, I don't know if we have time for that. I don't think the sanitary district, now that is kicking it down the road. That's kicking it off the road, down the road. In other words, a decision, we've already moved it from September. Certainly, I disagree with the explanation that was why we moved it. Of course, it may have been done in good faith, so I'm not going to question it beyond that. I disagree. Again, we're sitting here now, the first of the year. They're talking about a contract that started in May of 2020 to 2021. So again, I'm not sure beyond, and I believe under the circumstances here, that Attorney McCain is online. I mean, we're certainly taking the words of the people from the sanitary district. We're relying on their figures. And so the only thing I'm asking for is put the same assurance. Now, I'm not sure, and I agree, if the sponsor of the ordinance is the mayor, I don't have any problem with him coming on. Again, I think what he would come on and do is the same thing we're doing. What is the rate that's going to be set? Based upon my conversations with him, we didn't look at reducing the services. I mean, that'll take him about 15 seconds to say, I don't want to reduce the services. He wouldn't have, this is one source of revenue. We don't know all sources. And I don't know, maybe Mr. Sender can tell us, or Mr. Harris, what amount of time do we have to do these things you're suggesting? If we have the time, then certainly the mayor should be asked to come forward and do it. I just simply was of the opinion some rate would be passed on or before, let's say, January the 1st. Now, if I'm incorrect about that, then simply keep it in committee, I would guess, and specifically now ask the mayor to come. I would assume the same people would be with the mayor, but I think some of the technical difficulties he would pass down to people like Attorney McCain and his chief of staff, and certainly, as I have indicated to him, I would work along with him. But if that's the question, we're not worried about the first of the year, then just keep it in committee, reset it, and let the mayor come in.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lane.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to clear it up for the record. It actually was brought up from the council in October, not September. And I think to Councilman Godwin's point, that's exactly what the intent or the spirit of the letter that I sent requesting mayor's attendance tonight was for, just so that he can kind of come and share within a collaborative effort with the council to give us his insight. And if in fact it is exactly what you stated, I think it will be nice to kind of hear that from him. I do appreciate Attorney McCain stepping in and coming to address the council. But I don't want to put words into Councilman Godwin's mouth, but I definitely think that that is the intent of the request, is so that we can actually hear from him directly in terms of what his opinion is and how he would suggest in terms of the rate analysis that was done and what he would feel comfortable supporting from an administration standpoint. But Councilman Godwin, if you want to, if I misspoke, let me know.
No, you're right on, and it's not merely just about the technicalities, right? I've sponsored legislation, and I was not prepared to give a PowerPoint presentation on it, but I made my stance clear, and I asked the body to support what I sponsored. And this is something where it's not merely asking us to do it, but we have to ask the residents to get on board. And again, this is, this neutrality thing, is not going to work. There has to be clear direction, clear vision. This is where we're going. This is what we're supporting. And I'm asking the council to do this because I know the complaints I've gotten, right, from residents. I didn't vote. I mean, I had one vote out of the thousands, right, that were cast on the referendum. There's been a lot of talk about the referendum. The voters voted for that, right? The voters aren't voting for this, right? But they did vote us in office. And so it's important that they hear from all parties, all stakeholders, elected officials, who are promoting this or pushing this, because it's my name that's on social media, right? In terms of how citizens are viewing this, when this is actually a joint effort from the mayor's office and the council to deal with this problem. but it can't just be us here. All the parties have to be here, especially something that is so personal and intimate to everybody who lives in this city. That's all I'm saying. It's not meant to be argumentative. I'm not trying to cast an aspersion. I hope there's not an article in the paper tomorrow. But it's just the fact that if we say we're going to work together, we have to all be present. And that's all I'm asking for. And I don't need anyone to speak for somebody else. When that person should speak for him or herself.
Well, maybe we shouldn't allow people from the administration to come, because they will always be speaking for. They certainly, it will not be the same. No matter what they say to us, it can be overruled by the elected official. Again, if something that has been said, I certainly, if he comes on and contradicts what I have said, he certainly will have a tremendous, he'll have a bigger problem with me than the council has with me. So if you need him to come, then he will certainly be asked to come, not for cross-examination. He certainly will not understand the details to talk in terms of 5 million, 6 million. I'm an expert with numbers, faster than most people, even at 80 were when they were 25, let alone now, in terms of numbers I can remember. So you guys understand these big numbers. I understand $23, $25. I do not understand 5 million, 8 million. And I'm going to say this, I don't believe the mayor will either. Now, maybe if I've insulted his ability, it probably is equal maybe to mine. I don't think it's much greater. It can be greater, but then kick it down the road, set another committee meeting. I will now inquire of him again, why he didn't respond to a letter that was sent for him to come to a meeting. Of course, he's an elected official. The only person you can demand to come to a meeting, unless you want to gear up your investigative committee, then of course you can, in fact, at that point, require him to come. You can ask him for any information under 36453, certainly to respond in writing or something like that. Again, maybe he and we talked, and again, that's what we thought, and of course is not satisfied to council, so I certainly apologize myself that I've wasted any time. You will find I will waste less time of your time in the future with my opinions on anything. So what we were trying to do was expedite. And I was not aware of the letter. Maybe I received an email and didn't read it. I just simply was not aware of the letter.
No, it wasn't a demand to. Let me clear that up. It was just, you know, and Attorney
I use
McCain,
words a little bit different. That's all. That's
yeah,
all.
Attorney McCain, you know,
Please,
he let me know
if
he was
you
coming in.
put please in front of it, it's no longer.
I did. I put please.
That's enough. Then it doesn't matter. Whatever will happen. And again, when I try to say that, you think I mean it any way other than in good spirit. Whatever you said is fine. If you told him to come, period, that's good enough. If you said please come, that's good enough. The idea is to come. I did not recognize that the ordinance was his until I looked at it some time ago. That explains it. If it's his under our rules, 2020-69, then certainly he should appear. But what we've been doing up to this point is discussing with the sanitary district. It sort of caught me a little off guard here. And we have not been discussing it with the board chair. We've been discussing with people beneath the board chair, which is Mr. Mayborn. He has not been, Maurice Mayborn has not been demanded to be at the meeting since I asked for his presence some time ago. In other words, ultimately, whatever is going on over there is decided by the board. So we certainly need not only the mayor here, we need the board president or chairman.
I've been here all along, Mr. Lake.
Or you're a telephone number. How you doing? Okay. I know how it is for you. You're a telephone.
I'm doing a great job. I've been here all along.
Okay, no problem. But again, I didn't recognize this number. I'll write it down. But be as it may, then fine. That certainly clears up that, since he had not said anything, and I didn't recognize the number as opposed to a name. So maybe, I think Mr. McCain wants to say something.
I just would like to say something for the record, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Attorney McCain.
Is that the mayor certainly acknowledges your letter.
Yeah.
And he asked me as the chief legal officer for the city to come in his stead. So I just want the record to be clear that he's not putting this meeting off. He is not disrespecting this committee. He sent his lawyer.
Madam Chair, this is Attorney Harris. Can I add something?
Good afternoon, my lawyer. Can I say, I'm Renzer, you come for me next time.
Well, that's fine. He does speak to you on occasions now.
I don't know how my constituents might feel about that, but I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay, y'all. Attorney Harris, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll make this quick. I just wanted to speak to something that Councilman Lay mentioned, and that's just in terms of the timing of passing the legislation. Obviously, I understand that the council has to go through whatever process it deems appropriate before it feels comfortable to vote on the legislation. But to speak to his specific question about is time of the essence or is it an issue, on behalf of GSD, I can say yes, time is important. And if the council members could just keep in mind that part of the motivation in doing this is there is a State Board of Accounts finding, related to the current billing practices. And the goal here is not to take that rate that we know to be too low into 2021, and which will result in yet another audit finding. So to the extent we can address it and deal with it, after, having had 3 years in a row of these findings, GSD's goal, and, Dan Vicari, correct me if I'm wrong, our goal is to get this done sooner rather than later and really not carry prior years' issues into 2021.
Right. And remember, too, that we have a joint audit. Our state audit is done jointly with the city of Gary. So that means this affects the credit of both the city and the sanitary district. Every year we have these findings on there. And this is our 3rd year in a row of having this finding that we're not collecting enough revenue to cover the cost of the solid waste program. And this year we also had to put together, because it's a repeat finding, we had to send a report. I believe it, Carl, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it was within 10 days or was it 30 days of the exit audit that we had to provide a report to the Indiana State General Assembly indicating what our corrective action plan is going to be. And we have no recourse other than say our corrective action plan was to provide a rate ordinance proposition to the Gary Common Council that covers for those losses.
I think another thing that the council should keep in mind, obviously, I don't expect any consensus tonight necessarily, but if we work with Attorney McCain and in seeking these additional available funds that are out there, wherever they may be, and those funds are used to defray some of these increases, a credit could always be provided to the residents in the future, so that we can still do what we need to do in terms of getting this rate to where it should be based upon the rates that are being charged to GSD. And in the event we're able to come upon, some windfall or just identification of additional revenue, a credit can be passed along to the residents when those funds are secured in the future.
And I want the council to keep in mind too, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that what was presented to us was potentially proposed for an effective date of January 1. So just in terms of a timeline to respond to that question, I don't know if it will adjust or anything like that, but I did want to make that point known.
Well, the idea is that every month we wait, we incur more losses. And I believe the last we looked at that, at the current burn rate, let's just call it, what it's costing the program versus what we're bringing in, we're incurring a loss of about $133,000 a month.
Yeah.
So for example, the first rate that was presented to our board for discussion purposes as a draft was $27.45 a month, assuming an October 1st effective date that the Common Council would have approved it and it becomes a billing practice of ours. When it got delayed, we had to change that to January 1st, and the number went up to $28.25. So that's to cover for, again, every month we incur a $133,000 loss.
Thank you, Mr. Bakari.
You're welcome.
Does any other council members have any questions, comments?
So just really quickly, Madam Chair, looking at the timeline, I certainly don't want to take up too many minutes. I don't know what our per minute per councilman usage is so far, but we only have 2 more meetings this year, unless a special meeting is called, the 1st and the 15th. I'm presuming that no action will be taken on this on the 1st, but I just want to know, as we said, the $28.25 rate, I believe, or whatever option ends up being voted on, we need to do that that's based on a January implementation date, right?
In a sense, yes.
Okay, so I guess whatever information we need, or we probably will be voting on this if it comes out of committee, Madam Chair, on the 15th of December. And so do we think that for any other questions or comfortability that people need, or information or assurances, that we will have all of that prior to the 15th?
What assurance you looking for? You're not talking about what we're working on.
Well, I mean, I think not directly, right? But I think in part we're whatever, I don't know which option is going to be. I have no idea, right, what the council may do on this. But depending on what those options are, or whatever is voted on, to some degree, we're I'm correct, hoping for some dispensation of grace, right, from the court. And if we're voting on something with that in mind, or hoping that we won't have to do further increases, or we'll have some kind of flexibility, I would like to a degree to know that, or have some sense of that as much as one can. And I think there's some other questions too that we need to get clarity on, because I'm not even at the $25 point right now. So I don't. We may have several votes going on depending on what ends up getting brought to the floor.
I understand what you're saying. Tell the council what figure you are. See, I thought your argument, and of course you understand when I use the word argument or debate, whatever makes you more comfortable, was the lack of the presence of the mayor. And in other words, does he make a difference whether you choose 1, 2, or 3? Because he's going to be speculating when he gets here. The only thing he knows for sure is his salary. Again, he is doing and has sent people so we can look at alternatives. But tell me what it is now. That'll give me an idea of where we are. What do you think it should be?
Well, I will take no vote if the sponsor of the legislation does not present at least on 3rd and final. And so that's, I mean, I will vote on anything. Okay. But in terms of the number, I think there's just some clarity I'd like to have about where we anticipate getting these dollars from. And are we thinking about, and again, it depends on which version we go with, right? Is this sustainable, right? And to what degree are we going to have to continue to raise it in 22 and 23 if it's not sustainable? I think there's still some mathematical questions that are moving around that's not at all clear to me, and maybe it is to the rest of the council, but I think whatever we vote on, it still seems to be insufficient, right? Let's say we vote on $20, right? We know that while that's something I'm probably comfortable with, that's going to lead to some other issues, right? That we need clarity on. So I also don't think it's necessarily the case, right, that if we do nothing, then that's Armageddon, and the world comes to an end. I think the same grace that we're asking courts in terms of deferral of payments might be the same grace we ask, in this time, the city during the pandemic is not prepared to take over trash pickup. And so we need to continue to rely on an existing contract that the city has granted the authority for GSD to enter into. So I think Grace goes a lot of different directions in this, and I don't want to feel boxed into some corner that if I don't vote for X dollar amount, then all of a sudden nobody will get their trash picked up in the city of Gary. So I don't want to create a false set of options and consequences. That's all I'm saying.
Well, let's just assume for a moment, then that clears something up. Let's assume absolutely we stop and do nothing else. We being Mr. McCain and myself, and you look at whatever the resources are available in the executive branch. I mean, you know what's in the budget. You certainly passed the budget. And so therefore now you have option 1, 2, or 3. If you're, Mr. Godwin, if you as my president, the leader of the council said nothing, I would suspect that's very powerful language before this particular council. That means we have no vote. And I would assume at that point, the sanitary district would stop services. I would assume it would do at least that. Possibly we would then have to, as you said earlier, use Mr. Williams to shut off, or Mr. McCain. They would be in litigation, protracted litigation. I certainly will not assist them there, although they don't need my assistance. So let's assume the worst case scenario. What you have now is all you have, nothing else, nothing else. You now have option 1, 2, and 3, or you've now delivered the 4th option, that is to do nothing and see what happens. Certainly, you have more than once mentioned 2 things. I have not said anything about. One, initially you were looking at cutting. You cannot cut your way up to this level over in the sanitary district. And number 2, I don't think it's possible for the city of Gary to set up trash collection where it would be prepared to pick up the trash January of 2021. So that's where the council is now. Pretty much I have no concern with any figure. I will make up my mind whether I vote yes, no, depending on the figure you come up with. So,
well, Madam Chair, I just want to quickly say that, yeah, I think that we're also making a presumption, and probably not necessarily a bad one, that if we do nothing or we vote no or we don't have, we barely got, only through twisting of arms are we even here today, right? If we remember, I think we had 3 people who voted to send this to committee in October. So if we did nothing, right, we're making also a presumption that immediately in the middle of a pandemic, and perhaps a new EPA director and new regional administrator and et cetera, at some point once they get confirmed, that all of a sudden the federal government is going to rain down on the city of Gary and say, you must, stop providing this service to your residents. We know you're cash strapped. We know you don't have any money. We know you don't have the capital and other equipment to do this service. I find that kind of hard to believe too. So it's not so much that I'm advocating doing nothing. I know we need to have some level of increase. I just don't think I'm in agreement yet with some of the options that have been presented, because there's a lot of other background data I think that we need to be clear on. But I also just don't like this. I think it's a false choice that if we do nothing or if we don't raise it to a certain level, then all of a sudden the EPA is going to be knocking at our door. They may be, but I think that's an assumption, just like the court's granting of grace on our debt obligations is an assumption, right, in terms of what they will do. But I don't see the EPA shutting down trash pickup in the middle of a pandemic on a city. I could see them giving us a deadline of 6 months, a year to figure it out, or they will force the sanitary district to take certain action. But there's been media about this already, and maybe there's been certain communications to that effect, but I'd be surprised.
Well, I'm not suggesting that the EPA would do anything. I would look at the sanitary district itself. In other words, again, in the past, they have failed to put this 3% on each year. Maybe that's the question should be asked. What, if anything, we have everybody online. My dear friend is a telephone, but I certainly recognize his voice. We've talked enough times, Mr. Mayborn or Maurice, we are friends. let's ask the sanitary district if we kick it down the road, what happens? I mean, I don't have any idea what happens. I know Mr. Harris indicated that if it appeared in a newspaper, there would be a likelihood that EPA would tell them to set the rate. Now, again, I have known him to be a truthful person over the years, so I assume that's the truth. The moment that this council took a non-action, as I understand it, again, I don't want to put anything in the mind of the sanitary district, but listen to what he said, and taking what he said, that in fact, the sanitary district would proceed to set the rate. Matter of fact, the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Alt, he thought they could. He didn't understand some litigation that took place. Why they just don't go ahead and set a rate. Now, of course, we would again gear up Mr. Williams, maybe, because somebody would have to say something, I would assume, for the people of this community. Of course, you could count me in on that. So I'm taking what Mr. Harris has already said as simply being a true statement that has never been contradicted by anyone since we've had these meetings, that in fact, the sanitary district itself, based on my conversation the other day, they saw the board like as the special administrator. Now, this is the local counsel, he's not the guy out of Washington, D.C., but I'm sure he is a reflection of the person in D.C. that he communicates with concerning the consent decree and this whole thing. So that's one of the reason I thought they would do it themselves, and certainly they would now move to collect all dollars. Maybe if I have that wrong, I'd hope that someone in authority would say that I have it wrong. If the council does nothing, what will they do? Not the EPA, not the U.S. Attorney. What will the sanitary district board, along with its staff, what will they do? Can you answer that, Mr. Sender?
Well, at first, I want to note this before he answers that. Since 2018, we have been receiving the service, we being the residents of the city of Gary have been receiving the service for less than what GSD is paying Republic, less than what the contract rate is, right? And so the first thing is that if we do nothing, they will continue to operate at a loss. And so I can say that with confidence based on the data that we have in front of us. And so Mr. Sender or Mr. Bakari, if there's any additional insight in terms of what your thoughts is related to the option of no rate increase being assessed, and we continue to operate with that loss at $16.30. What else could you pinpoint to the council members related to that?
Well, Councilman Atkins, I would agree with you. The district will continue to operate at a loss, and at some point, you know, it's not going to be sustainable to keep operating that way. But I think Councilman Lay has brought an excellent point. You know, this is, if the council does nothing, I think it will get EPA's attention. Do I know that for a fact? No, I don't. But I think they are quite concerned. They understand that the sewer user fees are to be used for the sanitary district operations of the wastewater treatment plant and collection system, and not to subsidize the trash pickup work. So I don't think it's a very good option not to do anything, but that's, again, just my own personal opinion.
If I could piggyback on that, this is Jewel, piggyback on Carl's point and comments made by Councilman Lay. I can't predict what GSD as a whole would do if the council takes no action. I don't want to be presumptuous, but that obviously would be up to the board. And I also, to speak to Councilman Godwin's question or concern that, you know, the EPA would immediately contact us and say we can't pick up trash anymore. I can't predict that either, but what I can tell you is that if the council takes no action, I can tell you what it would expose GSD and the city to. And I think that's the bigger concern, is the exposure associated with it. I can't really predict what decisions would be made, above my pay grade. I have no idea what would happen there. But what I do know is I understand what the consent decree says. And I know that if a determination is made that the sanitary district, and I'll only speak to the sanitary district, if the sanitary district is in violation of the consent decree, I do understand that there is an ability for them to seek sanctions and penalties against the district for continued violations of that decree. So I think the concern would be that by failing to pass along the appropriate rate for the service that's being provided, as Mr. Sender said, that would mean that that funds generated from the operation of the wastewater treatment plant are being diverted and used for purposes of the collection of solid waste, which doesn't ensure continued compliance with the Clean Water Act, which would trigger the violation of the consent decree. So I think the answer to the question from a big picture point of view is, by doing nothing, we run the risk of being in violation of the consent decree. And by we, I think that would be globally the sanitary district and the city of Gary, who are both parties to that consent decree.
Madam Chair, may I ask one question?
Of course, Councilman Godwin.
This is for Mr. Sender and Attorney Harris, and thank you for that explanation. Is insufficient action the same as no action? So that is to say, if we vote for a rate that's not what you've asked us to do, right? Let's say that 3 years from now it's $32, or 6 years from now it's $40, right? So if the council takes insufficient action, is that the same relative to the consequences as no action?
I can answer that first. I don't know. Again, I can't predict what the eventual outcome might be, but what I can tell you is, if the council doesn't take at least the minimum action of getting the rates to what they currently should be based upon the contracted rates, I think that's an issue. I think that's a failure to act. I think that poses a problem, but I think you would at least be, as a body, taking sufficient action if the current year contractual rate is charged. I think that's step one, at least.
Can I ask what and I know you all have said this before, but it's always good for the public record as they are watching this. What is the actual amount that GSD is billed per household for trash collection?
I'll let Dan or Carl answer that. I think they have the exact figures.
I'll let Carl do it. It's in the information that was provided to you, but Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, we're presently billing each household $16.30 a month.
No, how much?
Well, what are you getting charged, Mr. Sender? It's $17.70, correct, for this year, for 2020?
That is correct. It's costing the sanitary district $17.70 per household, and that does not include the other city services and an additional pickup from the transfer stations.
So one option is, if I may, Madam Chair, is for us to make the rate $18 even, right, or $19, and the city and these other entities will be responsible for their own trash pickup payments. So would that be taking insufficient action or sufficient action to at least make sure that we're charging residents what it is costing in the immediate month-to-month, the sanitary district? $17.70, right?
Well, that would be a big help, but as I think Mr. Vicari has mentioned before, that Republic is actually billing us at a higher number of customer count than what the district has customers on its books for what it's billing its customers for. So that would still result in insufficient revenue to cover their services.
So if we were to factor in $17.70 is the per household fee that Republic charges. If we were to factor in those folks who don't pay their trash fee, and to cover whatever percentage that is, if it's 10, 20, 30% of the folks, would that bring us to say $19 or somewhere in that range?
It would be $20.05 a month is what the bare minimum to cover those all those services without the additional transfer station and other city services.
So $20.05, and is it reasonable to suggest that we could do that? The city would be responsible for its own, the parks and so forth, trash pickup, and maybe there's a reduced rate for residents who want to use some of these other services. Because my question is, how many of the 21,000 plus households, how many folks are actually using the large item, once a week, or actually going to the, I forget the name of it, but going to the
transfer station.
Transfer station. I mean, are we talking about 100 citizens, 1,000 citizens? Because again, and I don't want to botch up Councilman Lay's famous phrase, but are we charging everybody for what 100 people are using, right? Or even 1,000 people? We have 21,000 some odd users. Why should all of them bear the burden of the 1,000 people or 500 people or 100 people who choose to go to the transfer station or put a couch out, once a week, a year, every year? So, I mean, I'm comfortable with $20.05, maybe even $21, but I'm a long way from 25, 26, 28. Because if these special services can be passed on to those who use them, that makes more sense than having everybody pay for it when it comes to something like this. That's just my thought on it.
Madam Chair, and I don't want to say, I believe there's certain action may be withheld, and maybe I'm wrong about this. If we pass an amount insufficient, I believe the sanitary district, again, would certainly look at the possibility of the board becoming the special administrator. It would be something they would attempt to do whether they could, to get back to what they need, as long as they're responsible for picking up the trash. They would do something. Now, they have not so indicated, but I honestly believe they would move to, in fact, attempt to set the rate themselves. In other words, if they needed $28, I believe they would attempt to do that before they would reduce the services down to the $20.05. I think they would want to set a $28 rate. Now, maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm thinking in terms of, if I was the board and you set it at 20, 25, that would be insufficient. It would be the same. Matter of fact, I would probably rather for you to do nothing. But even if you said it insufficient, my first action would be to see if I somehow could get authority to get additional money, period. They can't do it. They can't do it for the $20.05. It'd probably be very difficult for them to break it down that quick, that fast.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Now, I hear this being said, and of course, Attorney Lay have said it, about the board being able to do something. I don't think the board can do something without the council, because if that was the case, they wouldn't be here before the council. The special administrator job was to bring it before us, or if the special administrator, I don't think they can actually set the fee. That's the council responsibility.
Well, rather than set, maybe I can clear you up. The U.S. attorney, who of course is not aware, probably you're not aware of why it's here. It's here because something was done in the year 2009, 2010. I argued against, in fact, the special administrator, which was Mayor Rudy Clay at the time, and I'm sure Attorney Williams will back me up on this. I argued that the sanitary district could set the rate, period. They didn't need to come to the council. I was representing the council at the time. The argument was, in some litigations, was at the trial court level, which I'm sure you're aware of, Mr. Brewer. The city attorney, or in this corporation council, Attorney Caramucci, and I believe Attorney Gilbert King was involved, and they indicated to a trial court that the fees within the sanitary district would not be increased until certain matters came to the council. In my discussion a couple of days ago, which again, I'm willing to get it in writing, the U.S. attorney asked me why the sanitary district was not setting the rate. It does not appear to be part of it. For them to come to us is not part of the consent decree. They're moving outside of the consent decree because a previous special administrator caused this to occur. And I attempted to explain to him, which I think he grasped fully. He just said, well, I wasn't aware of that. I said, most people are not aware that what was done. I'm pretty sure it was in 2010, somewhere in there, when they went off. They went off the taxes, I believe, in 2009, somewhere within that area. And 2010, they came to the council, and I previously mentioned they came to the council for a vote where I was able to get Councilwoman Brown and Councilwoman Stanford the ability to vote, although they were employees of the sanitary district. So that's why they're here. You mean, can that decision be ignored? Probably can. It probably can be ignored. Again, so no, you don't have the leverage you may think you have, not really.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Moore?
That was Attorney Williams that was chimed in.
Oh, Attorney Williams?
Yes, I welcome Attorney Lay's comments. In fact, I was the director of the sanitary district at the time, and we did have an opinion that the special administrator could move forward if the council failed to act. It was clear that then Mayor Rudy Clay was simply seeking political cover and was coming to the council not to be on an island of his own. But the problem here is that there is no special administrator. And I don't think the board has that authority independent of being named the special administrator. Now, as Attorney Lay suggests, if they thought to have the title, either the board chairman, Mr. Mabon, or the board as a whole, however Department of Justice decide to do that, and name the board or the president of the board the special administrator, I am confident they would have the authority to increase the rate independent of the council.
All I'm saying is I agree with Attorney Williams, the part he has said. Again, what I'm saying, unfortunately, I probably can't demand the U.S. attorney to come here. They are not aware of this procedure we're now using. It was indicated to me by Attorney Galt. Wayne is his first name. He said, why don't the sanitary district board set it? He seems to be of that opinion. They're not aware of this coming to the council. I had to explain to him why they were coming. He basically felt without the use of the name special administrator, without the use of the name, that the authority to change rates, in fact, lied within the board, not this council. He just simply, again, he was not aware of this litigation that brings this document to us, such as the sanitary district coming to us. It was done several years back. So again, I don't think it would be that difficult. See, I don't want to just BS people. I'm basically talking about the citizens. If we set it at 2025, when you look good for 3 days, 4 days, whatever, the service is going to drop off substantially. So you basically have done them an injustice. We might as well do nothing and allow the sanitary district to do whatever it's going to do. I do not believe they're going to function with this insufficient rate. I believe the board is going to attempt to function rather than to piecemeal what they're doing, which means they're going to have to shut down certain operations, shut down certain people. I would assume it would affect their overall operation. So the first thing they would do is to try to achieve the money they need. And I'm only saying that, Mr. Godwin, not to contradict, but that's the way I would move. I wouldn't say we got 20 trucks over here. Now into this new system, we only need 10 trucks. We got this over here, we no longer need it. We got 20 employees that we no longer need. Rather than to go through that process, the first thing I would do is to try to get the authority, which the Department of Justice, and again, I assure you, I have no reason not to convey the truth to you in terms of what I've been told, because I've given you his name. He said, well, I thought, why are you here with this? He said, why doesn't the board set its rate and get it out of the way? He asked me, why were we trying to do what we're doing? And I explained the impact problem. So and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the board would not be concerned with the extra trucks, the extra men, the extra this, and somehow dispose of them. I think it would move to take the rate to its highest level. Now, of course, the council would look great to the public. Again, I'm not concerned with how we look. I'm sure the council does. We would say, well, we only charge you $20, but you're now paying $28. So the public would, be angry 3/4, I guess, at the district. They would, maybe 1/4 anger it would be at the district, only so much at the council. But I think they would function. They may not answer that question. I think they would be irresponsible not to attempt to raise the rate, to do it themselves. I really do. And maybe somebody should answer us directly. If we gave them the $20, would they now get rid of things over at the sanitary district? Or would they first move to try to get the money to become
I would like, Madam Chair, I'd like an answer to that question, because my thing is, and the reason why I wanted to go through that questioning of what are you actually being billed, what is the collection rate? I'm not sure that $20.05 is insufficient. If you're being billed $17.70, you're factoring in the fact you don't have 100% collection, but you provide 100% service. That you said that puts us at $20.05. The city will be responsible for its own trash pickup costs. Citizens, and I'd like to know how many individual unduplicated citizens are actually using the large item pickup and using the transfer station. Because if we're talking about 100 people or 200 people, I don't think the other 21,000 should bear their costs, right? They should just pay for that directly, or maybe some reduced rate. But I'm not sure that the premise of $20.05 being insufficient is the case, but I would love to be corrected if I'm wrong. Mr. Sender, Mr. Vicari.
Does anyone have a response to that?
I mean, I'm not sure it's insufficient. I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, this is Joel. I can answer the question. I wouldn't say it's necessarily insufficient. Obviously, it's not what's being requested. But from my point of view, which is the legal point of view for GSD, my concern is I don't want the exposure associated with violating the consent decree, and I wouldn't want continued State Board of Account audit findings. And I do believe that figure, which I believe Mr. Sender provided to you in answer to your question, that $20 figure would be the minimum figure to be sufficient in order to comply with both requirements. So I think you're on the right track that yes, that would at least get us to first base and out of hot water in terms of State Board of Account audit findings. And Mr. Sender, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of that financial requirement, that we need to at least be charging for what GSD is being charged. And
that is
figure,
correct.
Yeah, okay. I think we're on the same page there.
Thank you. You got my vote for $20.05. I may even give you 45 cents extra. and we can build in the 3% increase. If we want to say, look, 21, 22, 23, have it tiered. We know there's going to be a 3% increase, and build that in. I don't mind supporting that either.
I don't want to speak for him, but I think Attorney McCain was kind of going that route as well in terms of a gradual increase, but I'll let him speak for himself.
Because if it's going to be 3%, we might as well go ahead, instead of us doing this every year. If we know there's a 3% annual increase, we might as well either build that into the legislation instead of having this conversation every year.
Well, yeah, we have a current contract now, right? That isn't doesn't come to term until May 2021 with the option to extend for another year that already embeds the 3%, right?
That's
and
right.
In addition to that, the 2005, just so that we're clear, does not incorporate any of these services that we've mentioned over and over again, right? And so that is equates on an annual basis of $650,000 that is not rolled into that 2005 number, as well as that variance differential from the non-collection rate of what, 12% that we're missing. So I just want
that is in there. The collection
no,
rate.
that is not in the 2005.
I thought that Mr. Sanders said 1770 is the original number, right?
So it is, but Republic is billing for 22,280 homes that they believe they're collecting trash from. The sanitary district has billing records of only 20,381. So that doesn't count for uncollectible. That's just the difference in the household count. As Councilwoman Atkins has mentioned, there is a 12% uncollectible rate, but certainly if we could get at least to the 2005 and the 2065 for 22, that's the bare minimum. And then you still have to decide what to do for the other anticipated services.
But the uncollected piece is included in the 2005.
No.
It is not. It is not. That would be option 2. That would be 2275 would be the, including the 12% uncollectible rate.
So help me, I'm sorry, I thought I was clear, but now I'm not. Tell me how we got from 1770 to $20.05.
I knew you was gonna ask that.
So it's the difference in the number of households that Republic is billing us, but GSD is only billing 20,381. So we have almost 1,900 homes that they're billing us because they, and this was inherited probably back, Attorney Harris could probably tell us when, you know, we entered into this, but it was probably, you know, back
It was
in
15.
Yeah,
It
15.
was 2015.
Yeah, that, and so from 17 through April of 2020, Republic was billing us consistently every month 22,894, but the district was only billing 20,380 approximately homes. So there's a shortfall in revenue of that differential of 1,900 homes times right now is 1,770.
About $350,000, somewhere around there. It's less than 400,000.
Right. So how is that different from what Councilman Atkins is talking about in terms of the 12%?
So the 12% is what we figure our current residents are delinquent, that they're behind, they're not able to pay timely. So that's an uncollectible rate of 12%. And so that's what we added on top in option 2. Again, we were trying to keep these options separate so that whatever option all of you felt comfortable with, that you could go with. So I'm just trying to explain the differences, that's all.
May I ask a question of you, Mr. Singer and Attorney Harris? Do you think that Republic is overbilling the citizens of Gary by $350,000 every year?
No, that there is an interactive process that we go through, that GSD goes through with Republic to come up with what the appropriate house count is. And there is a process that I'll let Dan elaborate on that, but I believe it's a quarterly process where they reconcile what the appropriate house count is. But that issue is a little more complicated than I've described it. I'll let Dan get into it a little bit further, but there is, to answer your question, no, I don't believe that they're overcharging. GSD does play a part in determining what that accurate house count is. And Dan, why don't you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Trying to figure out the best way to start with this description of this issue. So one thing that is a fact, if you look at long-term records of the sanitary district, I think going back to the 80s, we went through a GIS effort a few years ago to show, using our customer database over the years, the city of Gary loses a population of about 2.5% per year. So with our current number of customers, that It was about 500 and some odd customers per year. So if you look at the beginning of this customer count, or at the beginning of the Republic contract, rather, there were, compared to 2015, I'm sorry, the year 2015 and compared to year 2019, there's 2,500 fewer customers that we're billing. That does equate, and it matches up with that 2.5% population loss. So we think, all right, that makes sense. Part of the problem, though, is that our customers at the Gary Sanitary District are only our customers because Indiana American Water tells us these are our customers. Because how we develop our customer list is based on water consumption, potable, drinking water consumption, which comes from a private company, Indiana American Water. So every month we purchase that water consumption data from Indiana American Water. So it comes with an address, a customer name, and the amount of water that they used at the beginning and end of the service period every month. And that's how we bill. Unfortunately, we look at that and we audit the number with what Republic has. There's more houses out there. So why are there more houses? It's an ongoing, constant, challenging effort working with NIPSCO. The reason we work with NIPSCO is like, all right, well, this apparent house is off the grid, if you will, for some reason. Tell me when the last known date of service is for that home. And they have been cooperative to give us that information. We also go to Indiana American Water and say, hey, apparently we drive by this house, it looks like someone's living there. When's the last known date of service for that home for water consumption? And they're also cooperative. And I would say they even have a higher incentive to be cooperative than NIPSCO, because if someone's getting water service and not being billed, they're losing revenue, right? And we are highly incentivized at the Gary Sanitary District because this isn't just about trash. Because if people are using water but not being billed for it, which means Indian American Water does not send us the meter reads, we're not charging them for sewer service either. And that's $8.50 per 1,000 gallons that we're losing. So the trash losses pale in comparison to the sewer services. So we are highly motivated to try to discover why this is happening. And there's a variety of reasons why that could be. If you want to talk about that more, we can. But there's always going to be a little bit of a disparity, because in many cases, we can just tell Republic, stop picking up trash at that house.
Yeah.
Invariably, you as city council people in the legislative branch, the mayor in the executive branch, me at the sanitary district, get phone calls with irate customers. Why did you stop picking up my trash? If there's one thing we can say about this Republic contract over the years, is that we get nearly zero complaints from customers. I will go back in time, around 2008, 2009, I'm sorry, when this was first privatized, when there was a customer count of 28,000 households. There might have been at one time, but as we have over the years parsed out that data and looked at it and determined who we have the ability to charge, we have that number now down to 22,200 and some change. And it changes every day too. I could provide, if the council would like to see, a graph of even just a single year. You can see how our customer count goes up and down radically in our city. And a lot of that has to do is we have a very significant rate of what I would call a transient population. And these are residents that come to the city. They may rent a home for a month and leave, 2 months, 3 months, or short term, and then they're gone. Whether they leave the city or move to another area of the city, it affects our ability to track people and bill them. So it's a constant moving target, but we are always going to have a higher number of customers utilizing the service that we're being billed for by Republic than we have the ability to bill for a variety of reasons. And we could probably spend the next 2 hours talking about this, which I'd gladly do, but that is it in a nutshell.
Madam Chair, that 350, and I hear exactly what you're saying, and I understand the complexity in terms of the billing, but if every year, roughly somewhere, let's say between 1,700 and 2,000 or 2,100 people are getting services that they are not being billed for, that's a lot of folks. I mean, if we were Chicago, that'd be different, right, in terms of the size of the city. But if you're talking about 21,000 users and 10,000, almost 10% of them are not paying for the service, or 12%, I think was the number. That's significant. And I don't know if there's a way in which we can have someone, this is maybe crazy, but to follow the trash truck, to actually do an audit to see where are we, because there's no corporation, I don't think, that would allow this, right? So the private corporation couldn't have that kind of loss on an annual basis and not do anything about it. So whether we need to go and follow the garbage truck address by address, and we have a whole list of recycling, right? Who gets recycling, who doesn't? But who are these folks, right? Because most landlords pay for the water. So yeah. even if tenants are moving around from place to place, a lot of landlords, I understand, pay for the water service. And so we should be able to still track that. And I understand $350,000 is substantial enough, I think, to investigate it.
Yep, Madam Chair. They have no way to stop picking up. That's what they're doing with the 12%. They're trying to recover it. I can understand them. They're attempting to recover this money. In other words, you have 5 people in a block, and only 3, let's say, are paying. You cannot discontinue picking up trash from the 5. Rodents will move. Animals move. In other words, what you would have out there is a tremendous health problem. In other words, you certainly would save the dollars by, going around watching trucks and stuff of this nature. But at the end, the 3 people would, the animals would move. In other words, they would set the trash on the street. Now, of course, we get code enforcement, create an army of people to go out and ensure that they don't do that. Again, I don't have a figure in mind, Mr. Godwin. Let's set a fee. I mean, in other words, I believe you would have 5 votes for $20.05. I mean, that answers that question. Again, you are voting for something that certainly will reduce overall services to this community. Maybe that's not a concern. We certainly have satisfied the Sanitary State Board of Accounts. That goes back to my point. We're going to satisfy one person, but we certainly are going to hurt all of the other people, all of them, even those that are paying will certainly ultimately be hurt because they're going to have a reduction in service. Now, maybe they're willing to do that. We also should take into consideration we have an elderly community here, and again, they're not a young, vibrant community doing certain things. They also maybe people on fixed income, a substantial number of fixed income. It's a lot of things going on that does not make this community an ideal community for someone to raise fees and rates on. I think, and again, I understand, and people I've talked to outside of this council, I've not had detailed discussion other than with Mr. Witherspoon. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to waste you guys' time with these types of discussions. But again, there are fixed incomes going on here. People of color basically are denied services. They really are. We have to do more with less, whether we're feeding each other, no matter what we're doing. So it's easy to sit here and use numbers to multiply. And I assure you, I'm extremely fast with numbers. I was able to calculate the 350,000 without a pencil and paper. I don't need papers to deal with numbers or to remember things based on memory. So it's easy to do that. It's the impact on the people that you're serving. The easy things to say, pay $20.05. And I believe that's now the figure. I believe this council is going to vote that way. I'm not surprised by it. The guidance you're providing. So it's $20.05. But what you're doing, of course, is restricting people that have no way to garner these services themselves. I do not believe the city can satisfy the obligation that they probably should. They probably never should have privatized. That argument was handled 11, 12 years ago. They got rid of trucks. They got rid of people. I think Attorney Williams said under some circumstances, the mayor was trying to reach for cover. You basically have discovered you want to reach for cover. You're not willing to take the heat. You need the mayor here to certainly provide a sense of cover. I don't see anything wrong with it if you need it. I just simply normally don't look for cover from people. I think they're going to do the complete opposite of what I want done. So I guess my problem is I don't think it's realistic to certainly tell the city to take on an obligation it never should have given up in the first place. That's where we are now. We're there. And again, you don't want to look at future revenue as a source of doing anything. Ladies and gentlemen, you certainly have set the budget. You have a very good feeling for the available money here. I mean, I've seen you take crude oil to use to cut the gas. You simply gave several $100,000 to the police and firemen. I certainly disagree with that. They're represented. Of course, I hate them. I just simply thought the 300 was not worth me doing something with thousands of people. So that's where we are. If the fee is now $20.05, fine. I will cast a vote. Certainly will not say too much after that. We've spent time. I will vote no. You will vote yes. You'll have at a minimum 5 votes, possibly even 6. So that's maybe where we should go. We should just take the 25, and they still haven't answered your question. Are they going to do anything? They're either going to cut the services, or they're going to seek to 28. That question has never been answered. We went away from that answer.
So if I may, we've been in the meeting for 2.5 hours. And I want to make sure that we have identified what are the actions for us to get to a resolve. Do we need more information? And if we do, exactly what is that information? Let's get to that point so that we could open up a public comment.
So, Madam Chair.
Councilman Brewer.
Okay. Councilman Godwin, go ahead.
All right, just real quickly. I understand exactly what Councilman Lay is saying, but I think it kind of goes for and against what I'm saying. If we're saying we have a community that has a fixed income, right, then that means we shouldn't be making it $28, right? We should be making it as low as possible, maybe $17.70, and try to figure out the rest, because if people have limited incomes, and we're aware of that, then we wouldn't want to raise it at all. In terms of the services, at $20.05, your trash will still get picked up every week. And the question I have is, in terms of the large item pickup, I don't know how many senior citizens are putting out couches on their front lawn to be picked up once a week. But are we talking about 100 people, or are we talking about 10,000 people that are regularly using the large item pickup and using the transfer station? Because if we're only talking about 100 people or 200 people who are repeat users of these systems, I don't think the 21,000 should subsidize the 200. So at $20.05, trash gets picked up every week. Republic is paid what Republic bills. We build in the 3% annual increase. GSD no longer has a deficit going forward. Those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Godwin. If I might, Mr. Vicardi, in reference to what Councilman Godwin just stated, I know for a fact that we have reviewed in our last committee meeting, not necessarily the quantity of individuals or residents that utilize the transfer station dumping service, but you did quantify the amount of tonnage that was assessed at those locations on a monthly basis. To Councilman Godwin's point, is there a way to quantify in terms of residents, household, or some type of I guess, apples comparison, so that we could see what that variance is that he's speaking of.
Yeah, we can. And that is, he makes a great point in that the contract has the large item pickup every week available to everybody. I know for a fact that I've tested this. I've put out a couch, I've put out an old TV. I've done both at the same time. Hey, that's 2 items, right? Maybe I'm cheating, but they pick it up. And they don't know where I live, right? And I've talked to other people, and when you let them know about that service, they realize that's a great service. I don't need to go to the transfer station. And, you know, let's face it, years ago, this was a concept with the citizen drop service to curb fly dumping. Fly dumping is not done by any of us in this room. It's not done by Joe and Jane Smith that live down the street. They're contractors, right? And they're illegally dumping in our city. And this was an effort years and years, decades ago, to try to curb fly dumping. One of the things, you know, and this is kind of a crazy observation, and if I'm getting off track, I apologize, but I've witnessed over the years of working for the city is that sometimes the best thing that can happen to a back alley in a lot of neighborhoods in Gary is that fly dumping does occur, because now General Services comes in and cleans the alley. And it wasn't just the fly dumping, the entire alley gets a fresh look. And I'm not trying to say that to support fly dumping, but I almost wish the money that we've spent on contractors coming to dump at these citizen drop sites for free be spent on chasing the fly dump sites, you know, and with the hopes that maybe you catch somebody too and make an example of them dumping material in our backyards. So if I'm off track, I apologize, but that's just my 2 cents. I agree with Councilman that the citizen drop service, I think, can be cut. But then there are still, though, the efforts by city staff to clean up our city, regardless of fly dumping or not. Just this last month, for October, there was 1,000 tons of material, plus or minus, brought to the transfer station by the city at $46 a ton. That's 46 grand in 1 month. And when we do a good job, right, we're cleaning up the city, it comes at a cost. So we need to determine how that will get paid for, because right now we're paying for it at the sanitary district with no revenue to cover that. Did I answer your question, Madam Chair?
Kind of, but I think what we really need to do is just take that action to quantify it based off like the number of individuals that use it on a monthly basis, and also like the cost. Like, so what portion of option 3 was assessed for the cost of the citizen drop service, if that makes sense. And then if there's an option for us to then, I guess, to not lose that service, but to charge on an individual basis when residents want to use that at the transfer station.
Sure, I could get that. Again, we're saying Gary residents, and I'm just trying not to be cute or anything, but these are contractors. Out of one of every, if I could guess, I'll get you the info, but yeah, they're for every Joe and Jane citizen, there's 10 contractors that show up. But they're Gary residents, right? They can show a Gary license, and they're
dumping on behalf of their business or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
And Councilwoman Atkins, can I add one point to that?
Just I want to recap that real quick. Just okay. Want to make sure that everyone is clear on that action, so we can be actionable as we try to move right up. Okay. All right, Attorney Harris. You're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I just wanted to, you didn't ask this question, but just as a frame of reference, other communities who also are contracted with Republic Services, instead of having a citizen drop-off site or sites, they have negotiated with Republic to have certain days that the citizens can go to the transfer station and drop off certain items and not be charged for it. Because the reality is, if it's time for you to clean out your garage, that's not something that's going to happen multiple times a year. You know, typically you'll decide, hey, I'm going to clean out the garage come spring, and they'll plan those days at the transfer site accordingly. So that's what they do in other communities in lieu of the more expensive alternative of having a citizen drop-off site available all the time, they instead have certain days that you can go to the drop-off site and take care of it that way. And then also they could go so far as to having curbside pickup on certain days for some bulk items as well, as opposed to just that one bulk item.
That sounds
Council
great.
Lady. Mr. Chair Lady.
Yes.
I just want to, say something in reference to cutting these services. We have to be aware of the fact that if we cut services, it's going to increase costs in other areas. As I spoke earlier about savings as it relates to savings in other areas, as it relates to, having services available for people. If we cut these services, that's going to increase costs in other areas as it relates to manpower, as it relates to resources. So it's a no-win when you look at the cut. Trash is something, we have to be very realistic here. I don't know if we can really look at this and say, well, they're going to just put a couch out here on this block this week or a couch out on that block and that week. Trash is just an absolute. And, if we don't have the necessary services in place, it's going to cost us in other areas in terms of people and resources. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I follow up to Councilman Weatherspoon?
Sure, Councilman Godwin.
So, Mr. Bakari, large item pickup is already included in the $20.05, right?
Correct. Every week, as long as it's an allowable material. For example, you can't put something that contains CFCs. CFCs are refrigerants that are found in air conditioners and refrigerators and things like that. Wet paint, things like that, you can't put in the trash. Other than that, they'll take anything.
So we're not really cutting that service. That's something we already have. If we do
It's already in the contract.
Right, it's already in the contract. So the only thing we would be cutting if we were to go with the $20.05 is this transfer station, which it seems from your statements, the vast majority of the residents are not using the transfer station, at least not on a regular basis. This is a contractor. Basically, we're subsidizing contractors for the most part, is what it sounds like.
Correct, but on a financial burden perspective, the costs for that service are about 15% of the total transfer station costs. The rest of the transfer station costs are general services, which is about 85% of the total cost month to month for the material that's brought there. And it speaks to what Councilman Weatherspoon just mentioned, and I don't mean to be smart, but he speaks from experience. He was our director of general services. He knows when you shift pressure in one area, it creates a problem in another area, meaning that if we cut that service, you're going to have more fly dumping. But, and that costs more. So the 1,000 tons a month will go up to 1,200 tons a month. Or I think that's what you were trying to say, Councilman, but.
That's correct.
That makes sense. And I think to Mr. Harris, Attorney Harris's point, is that some way to modulate that? I get we're going to have the general services costs, period, whatever we do, right? If we make it $28, there's still going to be $5, right? And then we know that if we make it $28, 3 years from now, it'll probably be $35, or 6 years from now, it's going to continue to go up. And so I think that's part of my concern is making sure it doesn't go up too high, because this thing never goes down. So is the city prepared to pay for its own fly dumping? I know that's very important, but is the city prioritizing dollars in a way that they will be able to handle those costs? Could we use what Attorney Harris has suggested Republic is doing in other communities to somewhat mitigate that loss? But in any event, I want to be clear that in terms of the residents of here and what they get for what they pay, we are not cutting services for the vast majority of residents, because we've already pretty much said that it's not our residents who are using the transfer station. But I certainly think we should. If there's a way in which we can modulate that, and again, that's another question I think we should figure out. How much would it cost the city annually based on our averages for the fly dumping that we're dealing with in general services? What does that cost? And so is the city prepared to pay that and to pay for trash pickup at the parks and so on? And so I think that's a conversation we should have with the controller and Mr. Sender, et cetera, in terms of planning, not just for 21, but going forward.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Brewer.
I just want to iterate that I'm still leaning towards the number 2, and with the other services being taken care of by the administration, where there's no services being cut at that standpoint. But I think there's a way that we can probably help increase over there if we will take the fines that's put on flight dumpers and increase it, and we will put a non-reverting fund in that would be dedicated to subsidizing the cost on the administration part. That's one option that could be looked at. Inside our community is a lot different than what we see in other communities. I have relatives that live in Maryville. If you just don't pay the fee, they just don't pick up your garbage. And to them, that's a big thing, their garbage not being picked up. But in this community here, it's not. It's so many vacant lots and things where people can dispose of these things. And they say, okay, we didn't pay, you won't pick it up, they'll get rid of it. So I don't think that's an option that we have where we just can cut people off on that standpoint. But I know we use the standpoint of cutting people off by eliminating their water usage. And I think that grabs people's attention a lot faster, that I don't have no water to do my, my regular needs with. But we have definitely some major challenges in our community when we talk about as much demolition that takes place. And I'm speaking of in-house demolition. All that goes to those transfer stations. And so I understand that, but I'm just asking that the burden doesn't go totally on the resident. I understand that this is something that has to happen, but until what extent? So I lean towards number 2. Thank you. I'm done for tonight.
All right, thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other council member has any comment? All right, seeing none, is any comment from the public?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nate George. I'm a resident of the 5th District. I want to thank you all for a very spirited discussion that you all are having that deserves a lot of attention. I guess I just have a couple of concerns as a homeowner. I am fine and I understand the rationale for a rate increase, but what I am not fine with is paying additional because there may be a count error or an accounting error. I'm fine with me paying for me and what I contribute, but I'm not fine for paying for others because we don't have an accurate count. I also do have an issue that I guess I don't understand why it is that GSD and you all have taken on this issue. Why isn't this an issue where Republic is billing us directly? Because now, as I'm listening, you've created an incentive for me to not pay as long as my trash is still going to get picked up. And so I don't know if anybody has answered it, and forgive me if I missed it, but why is this an issue where Republic is not billing us directly and holding us accountable directly as opposed to everything going through GSD? I think that if you did that, you would probably have more accurate collection because folks would then say, hey, my trash isn't being collected, and the burden then wouldn't fall on additional people. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
have a question.
I'm sorry,
I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can.
Can I proceed?
Yes.
Hi. So what I want to know is about the 12% uncollected fee. Is that the 3% that was the 3% escalator that was not charged for 4 years? That's my question.
Can you state your name for the record?
Oh, Jackie Harris.
Okay. And the question that you have is for just a question about the 3% escalator?
No, you keep mentioning the 12% uncollected fee. Is that the 3% escalator that was not charged for 4 years?
No. So the representative from GSD tonight, as well as in our initial committee meeting, stated that they have an 88% collection rate. And so that equates to a 12% loss in terms of revenues that they do not receive based on the total resident household who receive services. And so that is where the 12% is coming from.
So why wasn't the 3% billed customers over those 3 years? I mean, over those 4 years?
The short answer that we've reviewed is that it was not assessed by, at that time, as whoever was the special administrator. It was talked about in conversation in front of the GSD board, but in prior years, it never was proceeded into a resolution, and then an ordinance that was brought in front of the council.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other public comment? Council members, are we good?
Madam Chair, just one thing to Mr. George, one of his questions there about why is it before the council. I think it's almost a good thing that the council has a stake to weigh into this matter, because if it, with the GSD board, they could just set the rate and there it is. I think we have some negotiation room, ask some questions of that nature there. So on that aspect, I think it's a good deal that the council right now has some type of weigh in on this matter here with the rate increase.
Madam Chair, is there an answer to Mr. George's question about why, just like Indiana American Water and NIPSCO, these are all public utilities,
We're not billed directly.
but Republic billing citizens directly? Is that even how it happens other places?
I can chime in on that. This is Attorney Harris. I can help chime in on that, at least from just my experience, and I'll let Mr. Sender or Mr. Vakari add to it if they'd like to. But the difference between shutting off water service or NIPSCO service and just not picking up the trash is obviously because we're dealing with just trash left outside in the alley. The concern would be that it's not in the best interest of the citizens to have people not pay their bill, not have garbage picked up, and we've got 12% of the customer base, let's say, for example, with trash just out there not getting picked up, because they're still going to generate the trash. It's going to have to go somewhere, and the last thing we want is to then punish those neighbors who are paying their bill but still have to look at your trash that's not getting picked up because you didn't pay your bill. So it's just a difficult situation however you resolve it. So what we did early on when it was privatized is make a determination that the billing process would go through the Gary Sanitary District to make sure at least that would never be an issue of having, public health at risk because we've got municipal solid waste sitting in the street or the alley.
So are you saying that we don't cut off anyone if they don't pay their bill? We don't send any type of notice over?
So right now we've got a combined billing process. So it's the trash bill along with the sewer service. So there are notices that go out that people can get shut off. But typically that billing is not solely for trash or solely for sewer. It's a combined bill. But it's never the goal. That's always the last resort, is to discontinue service, particularly trash service though.
So when I pay my bill, isn't it so when I pay my bill, the first dollar that you take is for trash? Is that the way that it's set up at this time?
Yes, it is. And that's because that service won't get cut off. That's the service that we feel as though it's in the public's interest to always make sure the trash is picked up. You will have your own motivation to make sure your water gets turned back on, because obviously you need to drink water, take a shower, flush the toilet. You'll be self-motivated for that, but you can get your trash, out of sight, out of mind, and just leave it out there in the alley and let other people worry about it. That's the public health concern.
So I guess my question, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair. So my question is, you got a 12% where you're not picking up. What is the shutoff mechanism then? So that means you're being shorted on the GSD side also. So I would think that would motivate you even more to make sure that you're collecting those dollars from the GSD side more so than just the trash pickup.
Yeah, on any given month, we're sending out about 2,500 shutoff notices on an average month, right?
Yes.
And you're talking about water shutoff, Dan, just so he's clear.
For water shutoffs, because we put that for every penny someone gives us, it first goes into that trash bucket. And that's something that We actually had to sit in front of the IURC years ago and get them to review that billing practice, and they agreed that that is a billing practice that's acceptable and implementable. And we do that because there was a number of citizens for years that refused to pay the trash portion. And we changed our billing mechanism to make it so that your first amount of your combined bill go toward that trash portion before going into the sewer portion. So if you short pay by a penny, literally you are going into shut-off mode. And every month, again, we send out, everyone has seen them, I think. They're like $2,500 a month that go out, or at least you know somebody that has gotten one. The pink notices that show that you must pay, by a certain date or risk shut off of your water. So I don't know if that answers your question, Councilman.
Yeah, well, it does, but is there any type of late fee or anything put in place that covers?
So we are allowed by law, by Indiana state law, to charge 10% late penalty for only the current charges. We can't continue to compound that over months, right? So you can only 10%, it's a one-time thing on the current charge, but it carries forward, but we can't continue to compound it.
And we are charging that late fee, correct?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you.
But during COVID, let me say this there, during COVID, by order of the governor, executive order, we have not done that, right? Starting sometime around beginning of April through just recently, we have not been charging that 10% because of the governor's order.
So what happened since the governor took us to stage 5? We never started back charging those late fees?
Oh, no, we are now. Yes, we are now. We can't back charge a late fee.
Right.
The late fees are forever waived for that period during the governor's executive order. But we can go back and collect on that arrearage. And then the governor's order also says that we are required to allow customers to enter into a payment plan for any arrearage during that COVID period.
Okay, thank you.
So just quickly on that point, so the 1,900 people that are not paying roughly and they're receiving the service, there's really nothing we can do about it. Obviously, water doesn't matter to them, or it's not relevant. So to Mr. George's point, basically, if you don't care about water, or you have a vacant house or somewhere where you can put it, then there's no incentive to pay because there's no penalty.
Right, and you can imagine too the effort. Well, let me go back. So sorry, Councilman.
There's a lot of people who steal water in this city as well. I'm very well aware of that, right? So these people actually, I think we should be clear. There's a lot of folks who do have water. They may not be paying a water bill, but it's a simple plumbing maneuver. So for a lot of folks, let's not assume they don't have water. They're just not paying anything. Of course,
they're off the grid for whatever reason, and we're constantly battling and challenged with that, and we put great efforts into figuring that out. If you can imagine too, American Water's in the same way. They don't want people getting free water, right? They're a private company in the business of selling water. So we all are in this together, but we here's a point of just further context. The 2015, the year 2015 customer count, and then you compare it to the 2019 customer count, which we took was our peak month, and that's what's in your resolution that we've provided, or ordinance that we've provided to you. Carl, help me out. What was that number? I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 20,381, but it was roughly 2,500 fewer homes, right, in that 5-year period, which again matches up with that 2.5% population loss we have per year. The striking thing about that, though, yes, there was 2,500 fewer homes, but there were 3,400 different addresses. So what we looked into that even further, and we've done windshield surveys looking at let's take a sample of 100 homes. We have people go do windshield surveys. What's going on? And we'll see that in 2015, there might've been a house that was lived in, and then in 2019, it's abandoned, or it's a burnout. Whatever happened, it's off the grid. And then it goes the other way too. There could be a house that was not being lived in 2015, and now it's being lived in 2019. But again, that disparity or the difference between the lists is 3,400 different addresses, which again speaks to what I said before, is we have a highly transient population moving from house to house or in and out of the city. which adds to that challenge. And I hear you, Nate George, about you don't want to pay for an unaudited number. We're constantly auditing that number. And I'm just being very transparent about the challenges that we see when trying to audit that number.
Madam Chair, somewhat in that, may I?
Yes, please.
One of the reasons I understand that GSD, and I guess they can correct me, Republic didn't have a billing system. We haven't discussed what the problem would be if they had to institute a billing system. I suspect the fees would even be higher. They would have to compute their billing system. That's why I understand GSD is billing. Now, maybe I have, I never asked anybody to give it to me in writing or an affidavit, but I understood they were more prepared to do it than a trash collection company was prepared to do it. So that was an agreement they had initially to set it up. So again, rather than get tied into the 17, the 20 and all of that, if they had to set up a billing system, it would even be more costly because GSD already, as I understand it, had such a system in place. So that was part of, as I understand it, and I'm sure I will be corrected, hopefully by someone with the information as opposed to the council.
No, Councilman Lay is correct. Councilman Lay is correct.
So again, we seem to have two choices, or third choice. We got 2005, or whatever Mr. Brewer said, 2275. I don't agree with either, but that's not important. I'm just one vote. Again, we need to do something, but I'm going back to the question I previously asked, and no one has really given an answer. What happens if we said either one of them, do the sanitary district, accept this, period, and that's it. They don't do anything else. You attempt to do nothing else. You accept this $20.05, get rid of, I don't forget what you call that site where people take stuff to and take care of it or whatever the reduction is under 2275. We do that and you do nothing else. That ends it. That ends it. Nothing else.
Councilman, you made a great point about the billing, if I may. So the Republic does indeed have the ability to bill you directly. The problem, though, we went out to bid in 2013 for these services, and we had one of the bid options, or bid alternatives, if you will, was for, look, we'll handle the billing, and the other one was for you handle the billing. I'll look up those numbers and I can get them to you if you'd like, but if the bid then for the first year was about $13 and some change per household for us to do the billing, the option for them to do the billing was double. And that's, again, them looking at the risk of uncollectibles and all the other challenges that we're seeing and bringing before you today.
Yeah, it's a private company. It might not be 12%, maybe 24. I have no interest in that, getting that figure. I'm not sure what I can do with it. Other than look at it and memorize it, I probably could regurgitate it, but beyond that, it's not much I could do with it. Again, I don't know, we're down to two. And I'm sure it's acceptable to the majority of the council. So it's just a matter of selecting one of the two. I think they've indicated what we lose by doing it. Either one of these. I guess it's that transfer station under one. We no longer have to worry about that. And maybe they won't a fly dump. Maybe they'll take it to the, I don't know. But I guess we beat up on it. So those would be your figures. I think that's what I sort of said at the outset. I guess it was missed when I said it. Again, I said, set your fee. Whatever it is, set it.
Madam Chair, may I ask Attorney McCain a question?
Councilman Godwin.
So, say for example, because I am concerned about this ramp. I know in other communities they don't tolerate it. I understand we're different because we have people who, unfortunately, don't mind not paying and allowing the trash to collect up if we were to stop picking it up. However, could we use, what are our options for those who continually don't pay their trash? Is the unsafe building law, does that in any way, is that applicable if someone were to allow trash just to fester and create a public health hazard? You know, could we come after them because put a lien on the property and just, because this is intolerable, right? We can't have 12% of the users just with incentive to pay. I mean, what can we do to put pressure? Because at some point, people are gonna have to pay or not get the service.
Well, I'll give you the analogy that I use in the law, is that if you are seeking a judgment against someone without means, the judgment is going to be worth the paper it's written on. So yes, we can put a special tax assessment on their property. We can put a lien on them. We can charge them with their first offense, $2,500, which is the statutory maximum for the first offense, and $7,500 for every subsequent offense. And they can owe the city $35,000 after multiple offenses. Now, we're going to be able to collect that?
Would we be able to foreclose on their home? So for example, if their property was only worth, you know, we could do that.
Of course we could, but that is the most draconian option that we have.
Well, Councilman Godwin, if I could just jump in on that as well. A lot of a lot of the 12% happen to be tenants who don't own the property. So they don't care if you lien it or what you do to it because they don't own it anyway.
And so these landlords, who many of whom own a lot of properties in our city, I mean, do we think it would get their attention a little more than the average homeowner, right? Since it's not the tenant who's probably in whose name the bill is. I don't know. I totally agree with Attorney McCain, right?
Madam Chair, in a year they would only owe $336 at $28. I mean, that, or make it $30. They only owe $360. You're going to foreclose with who? Probably most attorneys you'd find it difficult.
No, I think fees, if they were not to pay all these fees that Attorney McCain was referring to, right? So
but I said the entire amount. Oh, you owe this city, maybe it was misunderstood. One of the reasons back in the beginning of the year, the city of Gary was talking about transferring certain things to Lake County. And again, if I understood it, I assume the council understood it. One of the reasons was the failure of the city of Gary to collect the fees, money from the city court. It's $1 million. It's $1 million owed, as I understand. They're outstanding. The mechanism to collect out of your city court does not carry jail time. So again, the county and everyone else will attempt to attach it to property. The question becomes the time it would take you to collect it. You certainly can do it. They're doing it now through code enforcement. We have all kind of ordinance. You don't cut the grass, you pay $50 a month. Or you don't do this. I was code enforcement under the Rudy Clay's administration. Sometime, and I tried to explain this to the council, you're going to see it very quickly. You're going to see it in service stations. Let's see, what happens. Obviously, you believe that the cutting out of giving them a business license somehow, 53 service stations are going to be closed because they didn't do the construction. As I've moved around the city, they haven't constructed anything. Now, maybe they have done it in the first district, but I haven't seen any kind of construction going on. You certainly have another problem. I won't raise what occurred. That's a problem. Again, they're simply not performing. Then it comes down to you close 53 stations. And again, I'm going to guess, I haven't talked to the mayor about this, but I think he'd be hard pressed to close 53 stations. Now you not only you're driving people outside of the community, I guess maybe to the truck stops to buy gas. So I don't think that will be done. So I mean,
sorry, I was going to say that the GSD does have ability to lien property, council people, and we do that, but the property actually has to have a title closing, or people have to pay their property taxes in order for us to get that money, right? So those are another two challenges that we have.
And also there's a lien and there's a mortgage ahead of you. I mean, you can foreclose.
That's right.
Again, I've been a county attorney, probably $175 million in property. So you got a document. I said a little different than Attorney McCain, judgment proof. I mean, so you have a judgment, they owe you $50,000. Normally the person owes you $50,000 can pay the $50,000. So in other words, they've already paid it, other than, of course, our president owed $421 million. Wait till they try to collect $421 million from him. He's practically judgment proof to $421 million. I mean, he don't even own no buildings with his name on it. So all of these legal remedies are not really legal remedies. Not for this, I don't believe for us or the sanitary district. They can be done. You then, going back to what Councilman Witherspoon, there's another cost out there. You got 2 or 3, maybe 3 people in the law department. You're certainly gonna have to get a bigger law department. You may have to get a bigger city court maybe, but in terms of what you would collect, and maybe I'm probably owed $400,000, maybe $500,000. I never will collect it, haven't up to this point. So you can lien, and I guess they don't own the building, so you can't lien the building themselves. You can bring them into city court, and the problem is you don't have debtor's prison. I would assume the majority of people not paying, I believe they can't pay. They're making a decision whether you buy a loaf of Wonder Bread or pay this trash. And I believe in the community with a fixed income, they have things higher priorities. Now, again, we're sitting here thinking in terms of they have the money and they're refusing to pay. I think it's the lack of money that is causing them to pay, and they're using it for a higher priority. Again, if you stop collecting from these people, and I would assume Republic maybe would try to do that. They probably wouldn't care. I shouldn't say they wouldn't care. It's their shareholders, assuming they're a public company or even a private-owned company. If he can't be compensated, he then would certainly reduce. So if Department A was not paying, or Person A, I suspect the sanitary district currently is more compassionate. Again, it gets back to, once you set it, do they do anything else? Will this be an acceptable fee to them? We don't have to worry about them doing something else. That question, for some reason, has been evaded. I mean, it's not being answered. If you take one of the 3 options or one of the 2 options, you said it, does that satisfy the State Board of Accounts? I got that much. Now is the sanitary district satisfied? Do they do anything beyond that?
Mr. Mabon, is it Mabon, right? President Mabon?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to respond to that before we try to wrap it up and have it resolved?
No, I think a little more clarity needs to come out in the future. But no, I don't have a response to that. No, I was just sitting there listening. I was wondering if the attorney had anything else to say, but no, I had no response to that. But I am concerned about a couple issues, and I hear people talk about the 3% escalator, and I know Clarius on occasions wants to know why that wasn't enforced in the future, and I think the attorney will probably get with him at some point, and they can hopefully discuss that. It wasn't something that the board was privy to, and it was never a discussion with the board. But that ties into the power of the special administrator. And again, I'm not here throwing salt on anybody, but that's something that should have been taken care of in the past. And I know it puts a lot of pressure on the city council to have to go out and talk to the public that elected them and to speak in terms of these increases. And being an economist, I know that we're also, we're ripe for a recession, and there's just a lot of cost increases and a lot of avenues that are going to be looked upon in the future. It's a tough pill to swallow, and the options that are out there, I'm just hoping that I know the city's not in a position to resume picking up garbage, and I think one of the resolutions might be to deal with the transfer stations, and I guess if the attorney are still going to be speaking with the DOJ, we'll see where that goes. But it's a challenge for all of us, and the sanitary district, we're commissioned to make sure your toilets flush, your stormwater's taken care of. 209, 210, this was kind of put on our shoulders, and it's been there ever since. It's been a huge challenge, not just for us, but more so for city council, because you're elected officials, we're appointed, and so you carry a lot more weight, when it comes to presenting this to the constituency out there. But that's, I know it's been a long night, and I don't know if much has been resolved. And so I'm going to just, that's my last comment there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mabry.
Okay,
I'm sorry about that.
And you do deserve an answer as to why that 3% escalator wasn't enforced in a timely manner. And I'll leave that up to the attorneys.
I think with that being said, I understand the notion of what, didn't take place in the past. But, as the body, we do have to make a decision in terms of the now and the future, right? So I want to just make sure that I get a feel for the body of the council, those individuals who have not spoke, because I've heard a lot from some of our council members. Is there any additional information that you all need? We've only identified one action from the commentary that Mr. Godwin, President Godwin gave us. If in fact there is a need to pursue this particular action for consideration of the body, then I will in fact recommend that we come back to a committee meeting on, I think that's December the 8th. If there's no objections to that, then that will be the pleasure of the chair, making sure that that action is what we discussed in terms of coming back with an analysis in terms of the citizen drop service, pinpointing an annual cost related to that to see if that should be included or there should be a different direction we can look at to be creative in terms of assessing that to those individuals who do take that particular service, because that will be an option for us to remove from one of the considerable options. And I think that in that meeting that we do have, again, the body needs to identify what is the price point that we will consider on the floor, and then ensure that that is amended. I believe that would be the right thing. Attorney Williams, let me know if that's wrong, but amended into the ordinance to reflect the appropriate value that we would consider in the Schedule A. I think it's called Schedule A. Are we good? Are we clear? Okay. No additional comment?
Public?
I'm sorry. We're coming back on December the 8th. What new information will we garner?
I just pinpointed the action item that was taken from the commentary for Councilman Godwin's. He wanted to understand the value assessed from fly dumping, since that was incorporated into the lowest cost option that was provided to the council of, I think, $20.05. And so we discussed that with Executive Director Riccardi, if there was a way for us to quantify the number of individuals who utilize that service, and also quantify what will be the household costs, or I guess assessed costs that will be removed from that, I think the 2005.
So you're searching for a lower figure, is that what you're saying, in the 2005? You're going beyond what Mr. Godwin said he was willing to vote on. You're now looking for another figure.
I think that this action was from Mr. Godwin's commentary. Is that not correct, Mr. President Godwin?
Yeah, I think I was looking at what it would cost the city. So one of the things that Councilman Weatherspoon wisely brought up was the cost shifting. So if right now, right, the residents of the city are subsidizing our anti-fly dumping effort,
right.
That's a good effort. It's important. But the question is, if we don't have a fee that can match that cost, what would the cost be to the city for it to pay for its fly dumping efforts, right?
So we wanted to quantify the usage. This is what I have. We wanted to quantify the usage and associated annualized cost. And that, in a sense, will be what the cost will be for the city.
Right. And maybe even some of this work that Councilman Lay and Attorney McCain are working on in terms of deferring our $600 and some odd thousand in debt obligations, maybe even some of that deferral might go toward, if that's the option that the council goes for, in terms of handling what that cost would be at the transfer station for the fly dumping efforts.
I assure you, you won't have that answer by December 8th.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Get that. You
Right.
won't even get close.
Even if we got a commitment that the mayor or the administration would be willing, should it have that option, to put a portion of those dollars toward it, I would be satisfied with that commitment.
So you just want to hear that from him, is that correct?
Right, that if we were to choose this option, right, that we know we got this, general services will continue to take dumping there. How will the city pay for it, basically? If this option were chosen and GSD wasn't going to front the cost, or residents weren't going to front the cost.
Okay, that's two things. Let me be clear so I make sure. I'm sure Attorney McCain will tell him, but I certainly will talk to him about it. Of the money, the dollar that we postpone payment, just $1, we don't have to deal with hundreds of thousands. We postpone $1. As I understood it, some portion of that he would be willing to provide to lessen the impact. We didn't multiply it out and get quantified in any way, but whatever it would be, it would have to come back to the council for the council's approval. He will make a recommendation to the council, and then of course the council will make a decision. It can appropriate the money, it cannot appropriate and spend. That has been settled through protracted litigation. But you will not have what Mr. Trent and I, maybe he should respond, if he does not complete a draft of the motion until November the 30th, it may take a couple of months. That's why I said initially set a rate without even considering that. If the rate is set without considering that, and then we look at should we get this $1 or some portion of the $1, we then immediately pay the sanitary district, which means would reduce their billing. We don't even have to deal with the public. We may tell them what's going on. I believe they should know. It wouldn't make elected officials look bad. And then the money would be used that way. But other than that, there's just no way to calculate it. I go with what Attorney McCain said. I think there's a high likelihood that if the sanitary district agrees, and they have agreed, as I understand it, because everybody is working on it, there's a likelihood as we go up, there should not be anyone there with skin in the game to disagree. In other words, the disagreement would have to be at a much lower level. So agreement there, I don't see the U.S. attorney, why he or she, as the case may be, would disagree. I mean, based on what? they're not owed the 4.3 million. The Gary Sanitary District is owed it. And they seem to be open to work out that postponement, because they would immediately know we would probably take care of that 12%. I mean, who knows in terms of what would be made available. But we won't be able to tell you that January the 8th, let alone December the 8th. It's not going to move that fast.
Right. So the only other action that I have noted is that if possible, just to get a commitment from the administration, if there's an opportunity to generate any revenue to subsidize the portion of those services that we just spoke about from the citizen, I guess the citizen drop service.
And Councilwoman Atkins, I want to make sure I leave the option that I had put out there also too, that we go ahead and set the rate, but we take out the 650,000 out of that, and whatever that rate is, that will be the public, and that the administration will come up on their end for the 650. That way we're not eliminating any services at that time.
So the rate minus the 650, but then the administration guarantees to support the 650?
Yes.
Okay.
Sean asked the question, what is the source of this? I thought we had a money shortage.
So I think that's what he's asking for the administration or the controller to respond to.
My only concern is that if we were to vote on that option, we're voting on, we don't have the information yet. So absent a decision from the courts, we couldn't vote on an ordinance assuming that we'd be able to deduct $600,000.
Well, your option two that Mr. Sender provided us, if I'm not mistaken, is aligned with that. It just also has the 12% that accounted for the non-collectible, yeah.
But my concern is that it would be just taking a bet, basically, right? I mean, we don't know we're going to get that. Or when we're
been calculating anything about what Mr. Lay is talking about doing with the courts and everything. I think they had already said if Mr. Lay and them are successful, and hopefully they are successful with that, they will give a credit back.
Yeah, set the fee. I mean, I, again, we can't give you the guarantee that you need. I'm certainly between Mr. McCain and Mr. Harris and or Mr. Walker and myself, and whatever we need from the administration, we will attempt to do our best. But that's why, again, maybe I'm just not understood. When I said set the fee, don't set the fee considering that, because we can't give you an affirmative answer. Set the fee. What we're talking about is not in option 1, 2, or 3. It's not there. I don't think it was considered option 1, 2, or 3. So Mr. Brewer said, you said remove the 600,000. I think Mr. Brewer said, I think remove the 600,000.
Correct.
So, which would be option 2. So again, a couple of hours ago, I said, set the fee, just set a fee. Don't consider what we're saying at all. I understood the problem there was the absence of the mayor, that he needed to, I guess, be out front or offer some shelter to the council or some members of the council, setting whatever the fee is. That's where I thought we were. I certainly didn't disagree with that. I think, and he is the chief executive. Yes, he should be out front. Same way, if it succeeds, he should be out front. So either way, yeah, he should be out front. And I suspect that's really what the community is going to look. They're going to look at the mayor. They're not going to necessarily look at individual council people. They will look at the mayor if something goes wrong with their garbage collection. That's why he have us working so hard. We just can't give you the guarantee. So I think you have to pick option 1, 2, or 3. Again, maybe the answer's been given. Does that stop the sanitary district from functioning? They don't go nowhere but take this option. That's all I'm asking. They're presenting the option because someone requested they present it. Does either one of these three options satisfy them? Whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and that's it. And I apologize if that question has been answered. I just haven't heard it yet. But will they do anything? The board, I'm actually talking about to Mr. Mayborn now. Do they do anything? I agree with Councilwoman Atkins. I know why they didn't. Why this 3% wasn't assessed. At least have a pretty good guess. It's immaterial at this point. It was a mistake. It's immaterial what your city audit says at this point. But if you take a look at the city audit, which by the State Board of Accounts, I really don't think I don't think the mayor can come up with the money. You've just set the 2021 budget. I don't think any money was left over. You chopped up professional services, and that's all over the place. It's just not the mayor now. That's all over the place. That's insurance, health department, everything. So beyond that, I don't think at this point, and I'm not trying to talk for him, I'm just looking at figures. Figures don't lie, but of course a liar can figure. But just looking at these figures, I don't know what, if he come and tell you he had the money, then he probably should be fired. I mean, I don't know where he gets it. His salary is what he has. And that certainly will not cover these deficits. So again, if the sanitary district is satisfied with 1, 2, or 3, then I think the majority of the council has to decide 1, 2, or 3. I really do.
All right.
Okay, so I'm clear as mud. No, I have those actions.
And I know we have to take action because the numbers will change every month after January, right?
Correct. Yeah.
To go up. And I would just encourage that that I will hope that we put in the 3% in there. And I think he has that in option 1 with the 2022, but I'd like to take this all the way through 23 or 24. I don't want to do this again in 21 or 22. And we should just, we know there's going to be a 3% escalator. We should give the sanitary district the option to enter into that contract with Republic, knowing that it's a standard 3% increase, and just build it all the way in at least for 3 years. That's just my thought.
I don't have a problem with that, but we got to set a fee to build this 3% of X. What I need to know is X. I don't have a problem with the 3%.
You said you want to see it go out to like 2023 and 24.
At least 23.
Well, you know that it's the contract. You know they'll be doing an RFQ, right? In 20. So.
Right. I want to give them the option. I want to give the sanitary district the option of entering into a contract with a 3%. It could be lower, right? But I want them to have that option to do that. That we have approved an option. Basically, it could be 2%, it could be 2.5%, it can't be 3.5%, right? Without coming back before us in terms of an escalator. But they would have that option to do up to 3%. We know that these companies, there's only 2, Waste Management and Republic. Flood Brothers is not an option. So it's a pretty quick RFQ.
Market, right? The main ones within this market, right?
I already had a bad experience with one of those companies, so it's likely going to be Republic that we're dealing with. So we might as well build it in.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that for the 8th as well. Let's go ahead and see if we could see those additional values. But I'm pretty sure we already know, right? It's just what Mr. Center has already done. Taking that math and pushing it out for 2 additional years. I think he already went out to 2022. All right, so that's 3 actions now. Okay, I appreciate your time. I am going to call this meeting adjourned at 9:10 p.m. Thank you for your time, council members. GSD, the public. Thank you. Oh, and Attorney McCain, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.